2, 1, go.
Okay. A very good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Academy of Medical Sciences, in association with the Association of Physicians of India, Vidarbha chapter, I, Dr. Meena Mishra, welcome you all to the COVID-19 vaccination medication CME. Today we have with us Dr. Ravindra Sarnaik. He is president of AMS. Dr. Milind Rushundi, who is the convener of this CME. Dr. Nanesh Patel, honorary secretary of AMS. Dr. Ajay Kaduskar, chairman API Vidarbha chapter. Dr. Shiv Narayan Acharya, chairman CME committee. Dr. Sandeep Kharkar, who is secretary API. All distinguished faculty, uh, distinguished members, galaxy of past president, ladies and gentlemen. The novel SARS-CoV-2 was indeed novel in many ways. It affected millions of people, igniting an unprecedented effect from the scientific community to understand the biological underpinning of the COVID-19 pathophysiology. The remarkable achievement of the RNA DNA vaccine made available in the world and in India particular in less than a year's time with crores of vaccination in India was indeed creditable. Another case, another area of treatment of concern is the new emergency authorization of the drug molnupiravir. So let us all today have an insight, a deeper insight into these two important topics, the COVID-19 vaccination and medication. And the CME is specially organized at the time when we are dealing with the third wave with the new mutation B11529. I request Dr. Ravindra Sarnaik, President AMS, to kindly give his welcome remarks.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, let me thank all the honorable speakers who have joined us today in this very important topic. And as all of us know, over the last 2 years, we have been struggling for this control of pandemic. In 2022, the pandemic has taken a little different turn. To start with, the Omicron was reported, it was labeled to be very mild. But over a period of time, we have seen that there are lots of restrictions imposed globally. So data that is available is consistent and the trend observed internationally are quite interesting and it needs regular discussions as we are going to hold it today. Today we are going to focus primarily on the vaccination and of course the new molecule to control COVID. Interestingly, Israel reported quadruple vaccination of defense minister and he tested positive for COVID recently. Similarly, the index case from France, triple vaccinated health minister, again tested positive. So vaccination has been very aggressively campaigned all across the globe. And in fact, the international travel passport, vaccine passport is also recommended by most of the regulatory authorities world across. There has been recommendation for booster doses and of course fourth vaccination also in few countries like Israel. So what is it that the vaccination is failing to control the transmission of the illness? However, what is well proven is hospitalization and severity of COVID cases have universally gone down. However, there are various vaccines also available in different countries, including our own country. So to highlight and have some impact and understanding about the vaccine policy in our region, in our nation primarily, we have the august guest to present as data. Similarly, for the new molecule molnupiravir, it has been there, but the interesting part is that it is mutagenicity and carcinogenicity is also real. So when there is a clinical trial already done in India, we have none other than the people who have themselves evaluated, researched this molecule in our country. So what is the potential of molnupiravir in coming time and its place? That also would be discussed. Following these discussions, there would be a very good panel discussion of eminent speakers that have joined us today. So I welcome all of you for this very interesting next 1 to 2 hours discussion on COVID. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarnaik sir. And now I request Dr. Ajay Kaduskar, who is chairman of API Vidarbha chapter, for his introductory remarks.
Good morning, distinguished faculty for today's CME. Dr. Leharia sir, an expert on vaccination in the country, Dr. Shubhadeep and Dr. Kumar Swamy, the people behind the research that has gone into molnupiravir in our country. Honorable chairpersons for today's meetings, Dr. Khaparde sir, an authority in himself, Dr. P.P. Joshi sir, a national expert on COVID and clinical research in our country, Dr. Ashwini, our very own ID expert, Dr. Mundle sir, who is a mentor to many of us and one of the senior most physicians of the region, Dr. Bhushundi sir, the person who started the ID subspecialty in Central India, Dr. Gosavi sir, who has been at the forefront of the COVID fight in Central India, and all our respected past presidents, chairpersons, and all those who have logged in into this program. We are indeed lucky to have such an eminent faculty and eminent chairpersons for this program. When I was going through what's trending in various physicians group in our region, I found that vaccination and molnupiravir, these were the two things which people were most interested and were the most discussed things. People have a lot of questions with the controversies that are going around. And like Sarnaik sir said, what do we make out of the vaccination, like the third vaccination, the fourth vaccination, what's the current status? There are a lot of questions in the mind of physicians, and there are a lot of questions in the mind of our patients also who come to us. So I would like to thank Sarnaik sir, Nainesh and team AMS along with the convener for these programs, Dr. Bhushundi sir and Dr. Acharya sir, for making API Vidarbha chapter a part of this program. For our guests out of Nagpur, API Vidarbha chapter is an association of around 800 physicians comprising from the 11 districts of the eastern part of Maharashtra, that is Vidarbha. And this program is getting relayed across Central India. So we'll be having the benefit of your expertise across Central India. Since these are trending topics, we hope that majority of our doubts get cleared. And once again, I would like to welcome you all for this CME. Dr. Leharia sir, an expert in the vaccination program and the backbone of this program. We are distinguished and we are eminent faculty, and we are honored to have his presence in our midst. I would like to welcome you all once again for this CME. Over to you, Mishra madam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaduskar sir. And now very quickly about the CME format today. So as already told by the president sir, today we have two talks. First on COVID vaccination India by Dr. Chandrakant Leharia with Dr. Sunil Khaparde and Dr. P.P. Joshi as the chairperson. This will be followed by the second interesting talk on molnupiravir Indian research by Dr. Shubhadeep Saha and Dr. Ramesh Mundle and Dr. Ashwini Tade will be the chairpersons. It will be followed by the panel discussion with eminent faculty members Dr. Chandrakant Leharia, Dr. Rajesh Gosavi, Dr. N. Kumaraswamy and Dr. Shubhadeep Saha. And the moderator for this panel discussion will be Dr. Milind Bhushundi. Now here I would like to request all that whatever questions you have, you may please type in the chat box. And however, the chairpersons are requested to ask their questions at the end of the talk. So now let us begin with the CME. I now invite the chairpersons for the talk on the COVID-19 vaccination in India by Dr. Chandrakant Leharia. So we have eminent chairpersons for this particular session, Dr. Sunil Khaparde, an international public figure. He is public health expert. He is advisor to Government of India. He is actually involved in making the policy, planning the various policies and getting them implemented. And his contributions, especially for tuberculosis, are indeed noteworthy. The second eminent chairperson is Dr. P.P. Joshi sir, again a teacher par excellence, professor and head, Department of General Medicine at AIIMS Nagpur, and an illustrious past president of AMS. So I now hand over the proceedings to the chairpersons.
Thank you, Meena. Good morning to everybody. Really, it is onset. I just want to congratulate to the Academy of Medical Sciences Nagpur, and especially Dr. Meena and Dr. Sarnaik, who has taken a lot of pain to organize this particular session. At the onset, I just would like to congratulate them also, and also they have taken very relevant chapters and well thought chapter during the time of COVID pandemic, especially section on the COVID-19 vaccination and medication. This topic is really relevant for today's and well thought. COVID vaccination is a burning topic, as you know very well, because a lot of doubts and controversies are there in medication as well as in the vaccination. And that's why a lot of doubts will be clear. What will be the hesitancy in the vaccine? What will be COVID vaccine after the natural immunity which is acquired? Or what will be the comorbidity and vaccines roles, and also the preventive doses which is already been started for the comorbid and above 60 years of age and children. So all these doubts amongst the general population, as we've been naming the professional, will be covered by this particular. Let me just take the opportunity to invite Dr. Laharia. Dr. Laharia is a very well friend of mine as well as the professional colleagues, and he has already, you know very well, done a lot of work in WHO since last 14 years. He was there in a different positions. He was in country office, he was in regional office in Africa also, and also headquartered in Geneva for the last 14 years. And during my tenure as a deputy director, as a deputy commissioner immunization, he was working in a vaccines only, in the routine vaccination and the polio program, when I was heading the national program of the immunization. One of the very important, he's already had a trained vaccination training in the vaccination, vaccinology, and epidemiology, and also leading expert in the vaccine in 2019 epidemic. He's one of the very important contribution, is a co-author of the popular that is Still We Win, India Fight Against the COVID-19 pandemic 19. That is with Dr. Kang as well as the Randeep Guleria, who is a well-known figures in the COVID pandemic 19. And as you know very well, he is a contributor for that. And he's a regular writer on newspapers, speaker, and every day we have seen on the television channel for the, especially work also for school opening after the pandemic, after second wave. And he has associated with us in the UNICEF as well as in other government of Maharashtra education department for the various seminar to make advocacy to reopen the school along with us. Thank you very much. I will now give to Dr. Chandrakant Laharia to speak on the topic on vaccination.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaparde, for the kind words and introduction. Of course, we work together. Like I was with WHO, and Dr. Khaparde was Deputy Commissioner in Immunization Program, and that is like 13, 14 years ago. So we have a long association. Thanks for that. I also take this opportunity to thank Academy of Medical Sciences and API Vitro Chapter, Dr. Sarnaik, Dr. Meena Mishra, Dr. Padoskar, Dr. Nanesh Patel, and everyone of the association for inviting me. It is indeed honor and pleasure to speak here. So in next 20-25 minutes, I'm going to talk about COVID-19 vaccines. And what I'll do, while I'll introduce the entire topic, talk about some of the broader themes, but I would also respond to some of the questions which are being raised. So I'll address in that way. So starting directly on the COVID-19 vaccines, but before go to the vaccines, what we are seeing globally and in India, that there is a fresh wave going on due to COVID-19 variant, SARS-CoV-2 new variant, Omicron. What we see on this slide this slide shows from the very beginning, like March 2, India reported first a new set of cases. Like India reported first 3 cases on 30th of January 2020. But after that, there were no cases reported. On 2nd March, India reported a few more cases. So that is the start of pandemic in India in a sense. So country had first wave in August, September 2020, second wave in April, May, June 2021. And now we are in third wave. But what you see on this slide is that in the first wave, and the bottom side of the slide is the number of deaths per million. You would see that in the first and second wave, the deaths were really high. But in this third wave, if you see that the number of cases are new cases per million are going really high, but the deaths have remained really low. And what is the key difference in the all previous wave and this wave? Of course, there was a natural infection in second wave. But one of the differences is because number of cases are high, but deaths are low, the vaccines. People are vaccinated. So this particular wave is happening in the period of COVID-19, vaccination. And that is why it is being like not causing new infection, but not severe disease, not hospitalization. And this is being termed globally as decoupling of infection from severe disease, hospitalization. And the reason behind this decoupling is COVID-19 vaccines. What is proven, what everyone agree, that 2 shots of COVID-19 vaccines would continue to protect against moderate to severe disease, hospitalization, and deaths. That's true for across the world. Wherever cases are happening, the number of hospitalization and deaths are really low in this wave, thanks to 3 things. One is COVID-19 vaccine, of course, some natural infection, and some characteristic of Omicron. So that's what happening. But a lot of credit to vaccines. And what we see that much of the different new cases are high, new tests per 1,000 are also a reasonable number. Test positivity rate is high, but we are not seeing many of the deaths or hospitalization. Now, coming to the last 2 years of COVID-19 pandemic, one of the success story on this pandemic is vaccine development and research. We have heard a lot about that. It took 4 years to develop the fastest developed vaccine. Mumps vaccine took 4 years. In COVID-19 pandemic, within a year, number of vaccines developed. And not only number of vaccines developed, but there are many more in the pipeline. So there are clinical trials on around 300 vaccine candidates. But we know that there are 28 vaccines which are either approved or authorized. Approved means fully approved or authorized. But there are a number of vaccines which are in phase 3 clinical trials. So like advanced stage of clinical trial, there are a number of vaccines. So the vaccine research and development has progressed in this COVID-19 pandemic period at a leaps and bounds. It has made a progress what could have been achieved in a decade or even longer. So that is a success story. Another part of success story that a number of these vaccines have been developed on the platforms which were not used to develop human vaccines till now. So mRNA-based vaccine, viral vector vaccine. So these are the platforms which are completely new. On these platforms, vaccines have not been used. But I also want to differentiate that these are the platforms which are new for the vaccine, on which for the first time vaccines have been developed. But these platforms were under research and development for last 2 or 3 years. Like mRNA-based vaccine research started somewhere around mid-1990s, around 1995. Similarly, the viral vector vaccine research started a decade ago. They have been successful, and partly the reason is that because research was going on different platforms. And since the SARS-CoV-2, the virus which caused COVID-19, the entire genomic sequencing was done on 11 January 2020, and that could be utilized for mRNA-based vaccine and viral vector vaccine. Some of the research on Ebola and other viruses was happening before SARS-CoV-2. And then when this virus happened, the Ebola was quickly tweaked to develop these vaccines. So that's how we could develop these vaccines. So on this slide, you see that we have vaccines on platforms like we know the Pfizer vaccine, Moderna vaccine are mRNA-based vaccine, Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is Covishield in India, is a viral vector vaccine, chimpanzee adenovirus, and Johnson & Johnson is also viral vector vaccine. Sputnik from Gamaleya is a viral vector vaccine, CanSino from China. And they are protein-based vaccine, Novavax, which is Covavax in India, inactivated vaccine. And India also has a Covaxin inactivated vaccine. So, many vaccines. Now, coming to other part, which is a WHO emergency use listing. We keep hearing that WHO does emergency use listing. So, this is the 8 vaccines are listed here. 2 more Covovax and Novavax have been approved. So, WHO has given emergency use listing to 10 vaccines. Actually, the way the WHO count emergency use listing, like for example, Covishield is given separate emergency use listing than Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So that way, some vaccines are counted twice depending upon where those are being manufactured. But I want to highlight the point. What is the purpose of emergency use listing? So every country which is vaccine manufacturing country has their own regulatory system. So to introduce vaccine, to use a vaccine in a country, country's regulatory approval is enough. But if many of the countries do not have a regulatory system, they are smaller countries, they do not produce vaccine, how would they know that whether vaccine meets some global standard or not? And that is the purpose WHO gives this emergency use listing for these vaccines. Before, this is new in terms of emergency use listing, but even before emergency use listing, WHO was doing this process, which was called pre-qualification of vaccines. And the same process is followed for the drugs or medicines also. The idea is that once WHO emergency use listing or pre-qualification is there, the UNICEF supply division can procure the vaccine and countries can be assured that this meets certain standards. So it helps in a wider distribution or countries being a little more confident. So there are 10 vaccines, 2 vaccines from India. In fact, 3 vaccines from India. Covaxin, Covishield, and now Covovax have been given WHO emergency use listing. Majority of these vaccines are given. One of the things is that if any vaccine is in the WHO emergency use listing, Indian regulator can approve that vaccine without bridging trial or any additional process, provided they apply for approval in India. Now, how many vaccines are available in India or approved in India? Given in India, the currently approval is being called emergency use authorization. These are not full approvals, which emergency use authorization means that these can be used in a public health program under government regulation, but they would not be available in the market or store, unlike other vaccines. So India has around 8 vaccines which are approved by regulatory bodies. And this is an entire range of vaccine. Covishield, we know, is being used in the country. Covaxin, Sputnik V made in by Gamaleya, Russia, which is also viral vector. These 3 vaccines have been used in India, but other vaccine approved, for example, Moderna from mRNA, mRNA-based platform, Moderna from US, and J&J vaccine, another vaccine from US, viral vector. These 2 have been given approval in India. Moderna was approved, I believe, on 20th of June, and J&J vaccine 7th of August. But these are not available in India. They are not available in India for 2 reasons. One, Moderna is already oversubscribed, so they don't have that much supply, but these 2 manufacturers are asking for indemnity, which essentially means any harm happens due to vaccine, the government would be responsible. But in Indian regulation, like a manufacturer had to take responsibility for any harm to individual. Indian government does not give indemnity to manufacturers. That's why the 2 vaccines, though approved for long, are not available in the country. Since government has not made a decision like on indemnity, unlikely to be available in the coming period. One of the relevance of mRNA-based vaccine was that they are known to be better boosters. If a 3rd shot is given with mRNA-based vaccine, that is the best booster. I'll talk about that little later. Zycov-D is another Indian vaccine, completely manufactured in India, developed in India by Zydus Cadila. It's the world's first DNA plasmid vaccine. It was approved around 20th of August. It was approved for adults, but also for 12 to 17 years. But the vaccine is not available due to supply issues and other aspects. So it's 4 years. So it also highlights that approval is not enough. Rolling out a vaccine itself takes its own time. Then we have a Covovax. It's a Novavax vaccine manufactured in India. Corbevax is another protein subunit vaccine. These 2 vaccines were approved on 28th of December. So India has a broader array of vaccines. What is irrelevant? Why it's important to have a wide range of vaccine? Because as I said earlier, that what we know from scientific study that if we want to give booster, so mRNA-based vaccine are the best booster or 3rd shot booster, 3rd shot of vaccine. The second best boosters are protein-based vaccines. So Covovax, Corbevax are second best booster. And then if you give the same vaccine, it also increases the level of antibody, but the quantum antibody increase is relatively lower. As an example, Lancet published a study by University of Southampton. This was published on 18th December edition. The study called COP Booster study. What they did, they studied the booster, different vaccines, 7 different vaccines and different combination as booster. And they found that if after, let's say example, Covishield vaccine, if you give a mRNA-based vaccine, the amount of antibody increases 24-fold. So mRNA-based vaccine gives 24-fold increase in the antibody. But if you give a protein-based vaccine, it results in 8-fold increase in the antibody. But if you give the same vaccine, Covishield as an example, Oxford as AstraZeneca, it results in 3-fold increase. So of course, any vaccine you give a third shot will result in some antibody increase. But if you want to select the best booster, you have to give a right vaccine. And that is one aspect. Of course, India has made a lot of progress in COVID-19 vaccination. Indigenously developed manufactured vaccines, nearly 160 crore doses, 90% plus adult population, 1 shot, 70% both shot. This is adult population. 8 vaccine given emergency use authorization, 2 developed in India, 3 developed, rather now it's 3. Vaccination of 15 to 17 started, precaution shot also started. I'll talk about the many policy approval expedited. I'm just flipping through, so I'll stop as per the need. Now, another aspect is that how approvals are done, and many times people ask if vaccine is approved, why it is not being rolled out in the program. So what we need to remember that regulatory approval and programmatic use are 2 separate processes. So regulatory approval in India is done by a subject expert committee of Central Drug Standard Control Organization, CDSCO, which in common language we call DCGI, while DCGI is a designation, so Drug Control General of India. But DCGI office has is actually CDSCO, subject expert committee that review all the data submitted by manufacturers for approval. One subject expert committee actually compare that what was the protocol and how the protocol has been followed and what are the outcomes against the protocol. And on that basis, a subject expert committee or SEC gave approval recommendation. The SEC gave a recommendation and the final approval comes by CDSCO or DCGI. As an example, subject expert committee approved in India that Covaxin can be given to 2 to 17 years of children. But the final approval by DCGI has been given only for Covaxin to be given 12 to 17 years. The DCGI has asked for additional data. So that's one process. Similarly, these approvals have been done, but whether like approval does not automatically means that if a vaccine has been approved for 12 to 17 years, it can automatically use for 12 to 17 years. Whether to use or not use is given by technical committee of National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization, which are made of technical expert. And then finally, in case of COVID-19, National Expert Group on Vaccines, NECVAC approved this thing. So those are 2 separate processes. Simply being approved in the country does not mean it should be used. And that's what is. So the separate process. We'll talk about a little more on this. Indemnity, I already discussed that foreign manufacturers, the manufacturers which make vaccine outside India are demanding for indemnity. Indian government does not give indemnity. So that's why there is this delay. Now, other dimension is that recently the subject expert committee recommended for market authorization of Covishield and Covaxin. So we know that these vaccines, all COVID-19 vaccines have been given emergency use authorization, which means they are being used on emergency basis, but they cannot be sold on the chemist store or to public on prescription. Market authorization essentially would mean that a medical provider can recommend the vaccine to an individual, and it has many implications. For example, if market authorization happens, vaccine can be sold on the stores, and that a medical doctor can prescribe. Some of the vaccines, like Pfizer vaccine in US, is being given that way. But it's not that easy. Like it's possible that even if market authorization is given, vaccine can be given on a prescription of a medical doctor. But government is likely to have some control in the sense that only the medical doctor can write prescription. But to get vaccine, on that prescription, individuals still have to go to a designated facility because those vaccine doses need to be recorded in the system. It's not that you can administer it at your clinic or facility, but this is moving in that direction. Market authorization essentially means that now it's fully approved. As an example, Covishield in India has been administered around 127 crore doses, Covaxin around 22 crore doses, which is a fairly good assurance that vaccines are safe and effective. Vaccines approved for kids in India is the Zycop-D, which we discussed, but not available. Covaxin is what being administered. I'll talk about this more. What we need to remember that Covishield, the viral vector vaccine, Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, is not approved for kids. In fact, the clinical trials of Covishield or Oxford AstraZeneca were started in UK last February for 12 to 17 years, and there was some adverse event. After that, the trial was put on the hold, and the vaccine, then the trial has not started in kids. So Covishield is not approved for children in any part of the world, or Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So only 2 vaccines currently approved, but there is research going on other vaccines for kids. Now, quickly talking about vaccination of older adults in India, started 3rd January onward. Only Covaxin is being administered. It's inactivated vaccine, 2 shots, 4 to 6 weeks apart, similar to adults. Nearly half of the eligible children already administered. Now, one of the point here is that why children are not being given, all children are not being given vaccine. The reason is that we know historically that any respiratory illness follow U-shaped curve. Essentially, the children are more affected and elderly are more affected. Adults are protected from respiratory illness. But in this particular virus, SARS-CoV-2, which is also respiratory virus, but in this, the curve is J-shaped curve. Essentially, children are really protected. So children get infection at the same rate as adults, as we have seen in the sero survey. But children do not develop severe disease or do not require hospitalization or require at a very low rate. So children are protected in this disease. Elderly are the higher risk than 45 to 59 with comorbidity, second highest risk, and then even adults are higher risk than children. So that's why vaccination of adults is priority still, and children are protected. Now, since there is some risk of children to develop severe disease, so what experts agree that within children, especially older children, the children with pre-existing comorbidity need to get vaccine, COVID-19 vaccines, because they are at a higher risk. Now, apparently, government thought about that aspect, and what they found that even within children, 15 to 17 years are at the highest risk. So it's a relative term. In comparison of adults, all children are at low risk, but within children, 15 to 17 are at higher risk. 2/3 of all hospitalization in India and some of the deaths of the low number of deaths happen in this age group. So government decided to vaccinate this age group. They selected all children because it would have been very difficult to find out who are the high risk children. So that's what the scenario in India is. 7.4 crore children in this age group, which means around 15 crore shots likely to be completed in 2 weeks. These are older children who will attend school, etc. Vaccination of older children, younger children, like younger than 15, no decision yet. Burden is low. Most likely, high-risk children will be recommended, but let's wait for that. There is no rush. They are at low risk. We have vaccines, Zydus Cadila and Covaxin. Few more vaccines are under clinical trial, Covovax, Corbevax. In the children, Bharat Biotech is developing a nasal vaccine. What we need to remember that for children, and for adults also, we know that COVID-19 vaccines prevent from severe disease, hospitalization, and death, but vaccines do not prevent from infection, as we heard other speakers discussing earlier. In fact, to prevent infection, individuals need to follow COVID-appropriate behavior of face masks, physical distancing. And that's what we are seeing, that countries which have given 3 shots or 4 shots, even in those settings, the infection is still spreading. It's only severe disease being prevented. And severe disease is prevented with 2 shots only. 3rd shot is not that much required. But the key difference is that in COVID-19, one of the things is that each vaccine is very different. So what is true for mRNA-based vaccine is not true for a Covishield or a viral vector vaccine. So every setting is different. That's why booster decision is different. But no matter booster or not, infection cannot be prevented by vaccines. These vaccines do not prevent infection. COVID-19 vaccines are known as a disease modifying, not disease preventing. And most important point in context of children is that vaccination is not a prerequisite to open school. Whether vaccination happens or not, children can attend school and should attend school. One of the things recently, the NTAGI National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization India chairperson said that possibly once 15 to 17 years children are covered, vaccination of younger kids, 12 to 14 years, might be open. Coming to the booster shots on precaution shot, as they are called in India. So this is one of the heated debate, and many people around December, before precaution shots were announced, were saying that India is delaying the decision on booster shot. But the point is, like, it is more nuanced discussion. The point is that this is a respiratory illness. In respiratory illnesses, viruses keep changing, so we need long future protection in the future through boosters. So definitely in COVID-19, booster shots would be required because respiratory virus, and also we know in respiratory viruses or respiratory illnesses, immunity decline with the period of time. So booster will be needed, there is no doubt. Now, what is not known clearly, that at what interval after 2 shots booster should be given. So that is what studies were being asked. Second, India was also waiting for the right booster. Like, we are giving booster shots, third shot as a precaution shot, when there is limited evidence that whether it will be effective or not. In a sense that it will result in increase in antibody, but whether that increase is enough to provide protection, that is not proven. Because in COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, after vaccination, there is no antibody level which can be termed protected level. The correlate of protection is not there. So current assumption of boosters in India is that if there is an increase in antibody, it will probably provide protection, but we really do not know. And then the other point is that if idea is to increase the level of antibody, then we should be giving a vaccine which will result in maximum increase in level of antibody. Why give the same vaccine which will result in lower level of antibody? So those were the discussion, and those are still unanswered question. Then third thing in India was that we know scientifically that people who receive 2 shots and also had natural infection are protected for longer. And a natural infection after vaccination essentially works as a third shot in some sense. It definitely resulted in increased antibody. There are studies from South Africa which have found that Omicron infection in the individual who were previously vaccinated results in 14-fold increased antibody, which is and which protects from future Delta variant infection or subsequent infection. Just remember that Omicron infection results in 14-fold antibody. If we give a third shot of Covishield vaccines, let's say, it will result in 3-fold increase in antibody. So I'm not arguing that we should be waiting for natural infection, but I'm making a case that when natural infection happens automatically, it has provided some protection. That is the difference in India. Third dimension is that, so which vaccine, at what interval, which population group, those were the unanswered question. But now we have, of course, there was another dimension that this could not have been waited indefinitely. These studies should have been commissioned or conducted earlier. They were conducted, but there were not enough volunteers to join the study. So Indian government now has started precaution shot for health workers, frontline workers, and population above 60 years, which have a comorbidity. So that's India's current policy on precaution shot. One of the things is that what is currently being missed from India's COVID-19 booster policy, that ideally experts agree that if you are giving booster doses, it should not be only with people with comorbidity above 60 years. Everyone above 60 should get a booster shot, and not just people with comorbidity. Health worker and frontline worker and 60+ should get a booster shot. And since we don't have much of the choice, we should continue to give a booster with the same vaccine. But I also think, because of scientific evidence, that once Covovax and Corbevax become available, those are likely to be used as a third shot, because there is enough science that that is a better approach. It is possible that the Indian government at that point of time would say that individual can choose either same vaccine as a third shot, or a protein-based vaccine as a third shot. Both are safe. So that's going to happen. What will be the future of COVID-19 vaccine? Of course, these are the first generation vaccine developed in a short period of time, not in rush, but in a shorter period of time. And future vaccines are always improved. Either you add adjuvants, or there are different tweaking are done. So future vaccines are always better. So there will be second generation vaccines. Some of the manufacturers are also talking about variant-specific vaccine. There is a discourse on pan-corona vaccine, which essentially means all possible corona variants would be covered. But scientists are also working with the use of artificial intelligence, so they can predict what are the likely mutations in the spike protein in the future. So pan-corona vaccines are the AI-based vaccine, which would focus upon not only existing vaccine variants, but future variants. So they would cover all the possible mutations and provide better protection. So that is also being researched. We really do not know how frequently a booster dose will be needed. But once, like currently, for example, right now, Omicron wave is going on. So many people are getting exposed, and which essentially means that if you are getting exposed, you will develop antibody, and India may not need an immediate booster for all adults because of this ongoing wave. We also know government has announced that even if you are eligible for precaution shot, but if you recently got COVID-19 infection, confirmed COVID-19 RT-PCR confirmed, or any confirmed COVID-19 infection, you can delay your precaution shot by another 3 months. So that is a proof that this prevent natural infection provides some protection. So we really do not know how frequently and when a booster dose will be required. Booster doses will be needed most likely for high-risk individual health workers. It could be interval could be every 1 year, every 2 years. What is important that these vaccines will keep coming. We might require booster on different platforms. So I want to give an example. What would happen to the future of COVID-19 vaccine and vaccination? One of the evolutionary virologists from Australia who was involved in detecting the sequencing genome of SARS-CoV-2 on 11 January 2020, she had said that it is possible that every 10 years, the SARS-CoV-2 will completely change. It will be very different from the original virus. So every 10 years, we would require a different vaccine. Or it is also possibility that future coronavirus vaccine or COVID-19 vaccines would be with 2 variants and 2 strains. And that's what all are the possibility. In interest of time, I'll go a little fast and then stop another 2 minutes. So what is the status of vaccination? This slide shows vaccination fully or partially vaccinated in terms of entire population. Not because India is vaccinating mainly adults and 15 to 17 years. So if we compare adult population only, then India has achieved 90% coverage with at least 1 shot. But if we look at proportion of entire population, India has achieved a 66% coverage with the at least 1 shot. 49% fully. Nearly half of India's population is fully vaccinated. 18% partially vaccinated. What you see that while world is doing better, India has done really fairly well in this. But there are some parts of the world, Africa, where only 10% of population has received both shot and another 5% 2 shots. And this is challenging because unless entire population, entire world is vaccinated, there would be risk of emergence of new variants, which is a real possibility. Final slide, and then I'll stop. So a few things. One is that COVID-19 vaccines, especially 2 shots, continue to protect from moderate to severe disease, hospitalization, and death. And with the natural infection situation like India, there is no rush for a booster dose in the country. Of course, some high risk should be vaccinated. Yes, the point I missed earlier that one big point missing in India's booster dose policy that everyone above 60 should be vaccinated. Second, the immunocompromised individual, irrespective of whether they are younger than 60 or older than 60, but all adults who are immunocompromised, proven immunocompromised, should get a 3rd shot. But probably the reason it has not been decided because we really do not know that whether giving a 3rd shot in immunocompromised individual will result in antibody production. If 2 shots were not enough, but the 3rd shot will be producing antibody, we do not know for the vaccines being used in India, like Covishield and Covaxin. But for mRNA-based vaccine, it's proven that if you give a third shot of mRNA-based vaccine, it results in a good protection. So that is unknown, but that's why this way. Will healthy adult children need booster? Probably healthy adult children will not need booster. Has Omicron changed the vaccine discourse? No. Vaccines continue to protect from severe disease, hospitalization. To prevent infection, we need to wear masks. Thank you very much. And this is the book I have written. So I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chandrakant Leharia and Dr. P.P. Joshi. I'm sorry I could not join earlier because I'm chairing this session, one of the chairpersons, and that was a very excellent talk given by you. This is a makeshift arrangement which I've made to connect myself. You've given a very good overview of the vaccine strategy in India, and we know that vaccines are probably the best way to control and finish the pandemic. And we also know that the vaccine rollout story of India has been a great success story, with Prime Minister Prime Minister Modi launching it on 16th of January last year, and as now we have nearly completed 1 year of this vaccination in India. But the vaccines which are now available with us actually cannot stop infection and cannot stop the pandemic, because the problem that these vaccines actually prevent severe disease and prevent hospitalizations and prevent deaths, but do not prevent infection. And because of this, the vaccine will continue to transmit and continue to spread to other parts. And therefore, here problem of vaccine inequity is very important. And unless all of us are vaccinated, especially we are not safe. And especially in countries like Africa, where the vaccination status is very poor, it is important that the virus that should be covered properly, because otherwise the virus would continue to replicate in those countries where vaccination status is very poor, and that might lead to again emergence of further mutants. And therefore, all of us are not safe unless all of us would be are not safe unless all of us are actually vaccinated. Yeah, but again, the limitations you have also covered very nicely. The limitations of the available vaccines, though they are excellent vaccines, but the problem is that we need certain vaccines which can actually prevent transmission. And for this purpose, and you have also hinted about the intranasal mucosal vaccines, which can actually prevent transmission. And therefore, we are eagerly awaiting the development of such vaccines which can be delivered intranasally, and which would prevent and which would confer immunity through the IgA pathway and would prevent infections. And that would probably be a game changer in future, so that the transmission does not occur properly. I hope whatever I'm saying is audible. And there is another problem. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. The another issue is of vaccine hesitancy, and this has been very greatly highlighted by the recent incidents which has been reported of Novak from Serbia. The tennis player was deported back from Australia, and these kind of vaccine hesitancy, which is there in certain, not only in India but also in certain parts of the world, would also hamper the development of immunity which would be conferred by the vaccination. And the two very important issues are that vaccine inequity and vaccine hesitancy. And one should also understand that phase 1 trial of a pan-corona vaccine is underway and has been completed, in fact, by the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research in US. And we hope that this pan-coronavirus quickly comes into the market, so which can be effective against majority of mutants which could emerge subsequently in future. I think that was an excellent coverage of what you have done, and covered majority of aspects of vaccination, the success story of vaccination in India. And thank you very much for an excellent talk. And if there are any questions in the chat box, I think we can take some questions from the participants. I think I had a lot of problem in logging in. In fact, I tried to log in from 9:45, 9:50, and I still could not, and had to have access to another device. And this is a makeshift arrangement. I'm able to now speak and talk to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Laharia. I'm working in All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Nagpur, of Department of Medicine, and for your wonderful deliberations. Are there any questions in the webinar, in the chat box, that we could address to Dr. Laharia?
Sir, there is no
question. No question, and sir, questions will be taken up in the panel discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we can have some questions because there are hardly 20 participants here.
Sir, you can ask your questions as chairpersons. And now, sir, I think the issue is resolved. So now
Yes.
the number of participants are increasing. Yeah.
Actually, that was a participant faculty link, sir. That's why only 20 people are seen, but many are trying to log into the participants link.
Sir, participants we can't see. Those are almost above 200.
Okay.
Few people are finding it difficult, but then
even now I'm not able to log in through my laptop. Now I'm not able, so there is a problem of logging in, and there is an issue. I'm not able to log in through my laptop. The problem is not yet solved. No?
Sir, new link has been sent. It is login.
Okay. Another very important thing is that just one comment I'd like to make, that it is important that the government has actually taken a decision to give booster vaccination, or what is known as the precautionary dose, by the homologous vaccine. That means persons who have taken Covaxin also needs to take Covaxin. But you see, the global data in the Lancet has clearly shown that heterologous vaccination is actually safe, it's well tolerated, and it is in fact more immunogenic. And even some data from UP, where people have taken vaccine which is other than where they were actually, they had received earlier, that is heterologous vaccine by accidental. They have shown that it was well tolerated, and the immunogenic response is quite good. So I think the future course of action would probably be that once the availability of newer vaccines and the protein subunit vaccines like Covovax are available, and one should be able to get a choice of what homozygous, what booster or what is known as dose can be chosen by the person depending on the availability and the supply availability chain. Another important, in fact, the government has done a very good job of calling this as a precautionary or a preventive dose. It is scientific to consider that the first dose is the primer dose, the second dose is a booster dose, and the third dose, which now the government is appropriately calling it as a precautionary dose. I think it's good because after the second dose, people are getting certificates of fully vaccinated certificate, and therefore the third dose is specially reserved for people who are at this point of time, to people who are more than 60 years of age and who are suppressed, and that is a very important terminology which the government of India has brought in, and I fully subscribe to that terminology. Any comments on that, sir?
No, sir, thanks. I think you covered the majority of the additional points, so this is definitely the right approach. The key that, like I would say that there are many people who are keen that they should get booster dose, and I want to flag that India's situation is very different. Like many countries which are giving booster to adult population, we should not be thinking in that direction. And sir, you also highlighted correctly that there would be vaccines, more vaccines, protein subunit vaccines. If those becomes available, that will provide us a better protection, and that will be right time to take booster. But the Omicron wave happening in India essentially means people are getting exposed. So if we, all those who are not eligible for booster or precaution shot, don't worry. We are protected. Our experts and scientists and technical experts are looking into the matter. And as and when it would be required, it will be provided, administered.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very good point which you have covered practically majority of the aspects of the vaccination. I have just one point which I would like to ask you is that in order to finish this pandemic, we need to have those nasally administered mucosal vaccines. And what is the status of this? In what stage of development, and when would we expect? Because it's so easy to administer these vaccines and without an injectable shot, and it takes care practically of the mucosal immunity and would prevent transmission. So, what do you think is the timeline when these intranasal mucosal vaccines would be available in India?
Oh, well, the key idea is that some of the vaccines are in phase 2 or phase 3, early phase 3 trial, but like it will be good thing that those intranasal vaccines will be available, which can provide local mucosal immunity. But there is a word of caution, like there is not much of the hope from those vaccines in two terms. One, what we know that, for example, mRNA-based vaccine are known to reduce the transmission also. So if there of all the COVID-19 vaccines which are available, mRNA biotech reduce transmission also. And that is the reason some of the countries started on booster. But what we know that mRNA-based vaccine are good in efficacy, but then antibody level with them decline quickly, like 3 to 4 months after the antibody level decline. And
Yes, I
we
fully
also
agreed. Yes.
yeah. So final point is that we also know that like because this virus keeps changing, so and mucosal immunity is not very long lasting. So even if we have a nasal vaccine, they will be useful, but their protection would be short duration, and we cannot go into that kind of stage that we give a booster dose every now and that kind of protection would also not be there. So our major reliance on the COVID-19 vaccine should be on preventing moderate to severe disease, hospitalization, and death. To prevent infection, we should rely on mask. That is the better approach.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a very good point. Another important issue is one article which has been published in JAMA recently, that even these available vaccines actually protect against Omicron vaccine as well. And the odds ratios were 0.3 for that. And whereas for Delta, it was still stronger at 0.2. So they were even the available vaccines which are available are actually protecting against Omicron infection. A very recently article has come in in JAMA as well, and
yes,
therefore there is a very good point that the available vaccines actually are helpful and they can also protect against Omicron as well.
Yes, sir. The point is clear that to protect against the key outcomes, severe disease, hospitalization, and death, no matter which variant, these vaccines continue to provide protection. Even 2 doses continue to provide protection. Third would be required in longer run, but we don't have to worry immediately.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent talk. Excellent.
Yeah.
Doctor,
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Dr. Khaparde. Dr. Laharia, as you know that this particular, you have covered very well, all very excellent covered by almost all the topics of the vaccination, especially on the booster dose and natural infection, how will affect the booster dose. And also one of the question, most of the question has been already asked by Dr. Joshi also. So it is very good and he has explained very well. But at the same time, I just want one question, that is that this particular vaccine has been already approved by the emergency use by the WHO. And this particular, because now this vaccine is already having the stability data for 1 year, because we are already covered this vaccine since last 1 year. So most of this Covishield and Covaxin, everybody is having this stability data. So during the using of this for vaccine, we are just used as a emergency use. Where the preferable is that I just want that these are these heat stable vaccine or heat sensitive vaccine. And as you know, just like polio and all these things. So what happened, this efficacy of the vaccine is down when it not kept in the proper temperature. Or and for that monitoring, we are having the VVM in the polio and other all routine vaccination. We are having the this vaccine while monitor. We give the ensure that vaccine is vaccine efficacy is there, or vaccine is protected, or vaccine is having the efficacy and that all these systems are there, and all the co-workers or these workers in the vaccinations or the health workers are aware about that particular VVM, and they are all trained. why now under the emergency use it is okay, but now it is given in the very surplus, and it is already gone to at the PSC level and rural area also. So do you not think that VVM should be now make as a mandatory, not a preferable under the WHO regulation?
I think because BVM need to be calibrated for each of the type of the vaccine, and there are multiple type of vaccines. So I am sure that this BVM would come. But I also quickly, in last 30 seconds, I want to make another point which was being discussed, that there was some information that initially these vaccines were given approval for 6 months, or the shelf life was 6 months. And now some of the vaccine stocks which were being used in the children or available had a expiry date, and then they were given an extension of the shelf life, and there were not many concerns. But government also clarified, and I also want to use this platform to clarify that this is a normal process. So government extended the shelf life initially to 9 months, and then now to 1 year for both the vaccine. And this is a standard process because vaccines usually have a shelf life of 18 months to 2 years. But till you have that many months gone by, approval is not given. So there is no reason to worry that these vaccines, even Pfizer, and I also want to use this platform to clarify that this is a normal process. So government extended the shelf life initially to 9 months, and then now to 1 year for both the vaccines. And this is a standard process because vaccines usually have a shelf life of 18 months to 2 years. But till you have that many months gone by, approval is not given. So there is no reason to worry. I think something started from the other end. So that is another point. So don't worry about the shelf life. Vaccines have a shelf life has been revised as per the standard process. Thank you.
Okay. So shall we move ahead, sir, with the next talk?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And after that excellent presentation by Dr. Laheria, now the next session is on Molnupiravir, Indian research data by Dr. Shubhadeep Saha. I invite the chairperson, Dr. Ramesh Mundle, excellent teacher, renowned physician of Nagpur and illustrious vice president of AMS, and Dr. Ashwini Tade, who is a noted infectious disease specialist of Nagpur and who always actively participates in all the CMEs with a valuable input. I hand over the chairpersons for the further proceedings.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mishra, and thank you, Academy, and thank you, API Vitro Chapter, for asking us to chair this session. Myself and Dr. Ashwini would like to greet the members as good morning and a very good day for you. Friends, this has been one of the very eye-opening kind of a discussion on prevention and treatment of COVID-19 infections with addition of a new molecule like Molnupiravir. I am delighted to introduce Dr. Shubhadeep Saha, who is a leading pharma physician and currently a senior vice president and head of global operations of clinical trials. He has a 22 years experience in research, and the COVID-19 experience has been a great achievement for him. He is into clinical development of Remdesivir, Tocilizumab, Molnupiravir, Favipiravir, and also the Sputnik vaccine. Dr. Saha also has other interests of research in oncology, nephrology, rheumatology, HIV medicine, cardiovascular diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, and infertility. So a large sector of interests. Dr. Saha also has published 25 original articles in leading peer-reviewed journals. This is in very brief about an introduction. I request Dr. Saha to, Dr. Sinha to start his oration. Ashwini, do you want to make any comments or introduce something different?
I guess yes, we had a wonderful lecture on prevention, and from moving from prevention to treatment, we know Omicron has significant immune evasion. Though it's a milder variant, there's a lot of infectivity, and we are seeing, though the number is not high, we are seeing few patients who are in ICU who are getting lung involvement and all. So knowing what should be given in early phase, when we know it can be prevented in viremic phase, I guess Molnupiravir really was a topic of discussion in the beginning. Then there was controversy by ICMR guidelines. So there is lots been discussed about molnupiravir, starting from the molecule which was in vitro was supposed to be very good, 70% efficacy, but then the final outcome was 30%. But that's what. So let's hear from the expert who has done the trial. I was a part of trial, but I couldn't recruit the patients because by that time Delta and vaccination was taken over, and I could hardly recruit any patient. But let's know the details about molnupiravir, whether it has really any role and whether we can place it in our practice, because we know if we have to treat or if we have to control Omicron, we have to hit it hard, like the Pine Tree trial for remdesivir. So let's see what Dr. Sinha says. Dr. Sinha, we would like to hear it from you.
Dr. Sinha, please.
Yeah. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed AMS, IMA faculty, API participants. I am delighted and honored to be part of this August session. Now, I would also like to welcome our key chief investigator, Dr. Kumaraswamy, who's been instrumental in helping us design the study as well as be part of the he's an infectious disease expert, as you all know, from Chennai. Also with me is Dr. Srinivas Achari, who is the head of medical affairs. He's an MBBS from Osman University and has been in the pharma industry earlier with GVK and Suven Life Sciences before joining Hetero 8 years back. And so I am a Mumbaiker. I have been in KM Hospital, Mumbai in 1991 batch, and did my MD pharmacology in 97, and subsequently been in pharma industry for about 22 years now, and have been part of a few large companies and a large number of trials. I would like to share my presentation if on this topic. Just a minute. Is my presentation visible? I hope it is visible. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. I'm also an active IMA member from Telangana and have a small fellowship from them. Okay, so coming to the, so we did so as required by the regulatory local laws of land, we had to conduct a large phase 3 clinical trials and preclinical studies before we could the drug could be. But the startling fact about this product is that nearly 9 companies did clinical trials, and I request please mute the other participants. So the startling fact about this study, especially in India, is that there are about 9 pharma companies which had done the clinical trials in at least 100 plus centers, and there are about 6,000 plus patient data on this product alone in India, probably more than the global data that has been generated. And it is one of the most evidenced drug that has been approved in India, because none of the, including remdesivir, did not have this much data which molnupiravir has, and especially in the Indian clinical trial data. So there was some, as rightly said, there was some controversies which erupted due to the ICMR chief mentioning a few things, but I would like to not clarify that. I would like to rather present the data which has been generated, starting with the global data, but then we'll move to the Indian data quickly. Now, coming to the the requirements of the treatment spectrum across COVID-19, internationally mild to moderate. So they're classified mild, moderate, severe, and critical. We all know. But then if you look at that, as far as India is concerned, we roughly, the mild and moderate of international is what mild disease is. And when there is an approval for mild to moderate disease with molnupiravir abroad, we have approval for mild disease here. There are a number of pharmaceutical agents which have been approved in these indications, and I'm not going into treatment guidelines. Approved in indications, there are antivirals and monoclonal antibodies, whereas for moderate and severe disease during the inflammatory phase, anti-inflammatory drugs. Anti-inflammatory drugs and monoclonal antibodies, that is tocilizumab. whereas monoclonal antibodies in the first milder disease are a combination cocktail and antibodies. But this monoclonal, there are limitations of these COVID-19 therapy in the milder cases. Monoclonal antibodies given in outpatient basis are parenteral, require clinical monitoring, have a chance of hypersensitivity reaction, and potential to have be less effective in SARS-CoV-2 variants. Remdesivir also has been given on OPD basis in some cases, but not approved, but only approved for treatment of severe disease hospitalized patients. And other approved oral antiviral agents have limited clinical evidence. I just mentioned molnupiravir, again I repeat, has more than 6,000 patient Indian data before it went for approval. Molnupiravir addresses a critical unmet need. It is part of the spectrum of the nucleotide inhibitors and analogs, which potentially inhibit SARS-CoV-2 replication. And innovator phase 3 trial enrolled non-hospitalized patients with mild to moderate COVID-19 with more than one risk factor. Most of these patients were above 60 years age and with poor outcomes and symptom onset within, but the symptom onset should be within 5 days. As we all know, or even all the oral antiviral drugs have to be given in early in the disease. And the difference has been 6.8 percentage points. US FDA therefore approved the usage of molnupiravir in mild to moderate COVID-19 with positive results of SARS-CoV-2 viral testing with high risk for progression to severe COVID-19, including hospitalization death. 800 milligram every 12 hours for 5 days is the dose, with no dosage adjustment required in renal and hepatic impairment. Very important. There has been separate studies on renal and hepatic impairment where there was no and most importantly, there are no drug-drug interactions. So it is very good for the polytherapy because it is neither a substrate nor an inhibitor or inducer of any other drug. So it can be taken with or without food, and treatment should be initiated within 5 days. So pharmacologically, it is indeed a good an ideal drug for a polytherapy as is required in COVID-19. As you can see, it is not very different in structure from remdesivir. The core molecule core structure remains the same, whereas the side chains are different, and therefore the IC90 values are slightly different. Remdesivir, this itself can tell you that remdesivir would be more potent, and molnupiravir. So remdesivir is used in severe cases, whereas molnupiravir is used in less severe cases. So it gets converted into the N-hydroxycytidine, which is like a similar to cytosine, which gets phosphorylated. So molnupiravir is a pro-drug, and there are no molnupiravir blood concentration, which is the NHC, which is a circulating drug. And this gets incorporated in the polymerase, introduces transition errors into the COVID RNA, and this accumulation of viral RNA causes the reduction of the SARS-CoV replication, reducing the viral load and causing less infectious viruses. In patients, also this has been seen. This data, this random distribution of transition errors in the SARS-CoV-2 RNA has been seen. Molnupiravir is active against almost all SARS-CoV-2 variants of concern in vitro and in animal models. This is the same thing. It's basically a oxime and hydroxylamine and tautomers which get attached to the RNA. And these are the various in vitro models that you can see that alpha, beta, gamma, delta, as till date and till here it has been seen that it is effective, and high barrier to development of resistance has been demonstrated in not only in coronaviruses but also in influenza and other encephalitis viruses. The antiviral activity is specific to RNA viruses. So globally, molnupiravir was evaluated in comprehensive non-clinical safety program, which is the bone of contention today. With in vitro and in vivo safety pharmacology, a battery of genotoxicity studies was done. In vivo rat micronucleus studies, the most important one. There was no evidence of chromosomal damage. The tolerability studies has been done, and with mice, rats, dogs, and human primates up to 3 months, and there has been no such involvement. I mean, no major toxicity findings. Bone marrow toxicity, there was Dogs did observe there were 2 weeks of after continuous exposure. After 2 weeks of continuous exposure, there were some hematological findings, but they were reversible. In other species, rodent and non-rodent, no evidence of bone marrow hematopoietic toxicity has been seen, and there has been no evidence in the large number of clinical trials which have been done. The effect on growth plate, no effect at 1 month. There is an increased thickness at 3 months. It is only seen in rats, and this is not relevant to human adults. A comprehensive development and reproductive toxicology assessment has been done at 1,000 times therapeutic dosage in long-term toxicity studies. Effect on developing fetal were observed, and because of this, it was not recommended in pregnancy. Mutagenesis studies in vivo were also done in the pig and transgenic rodent assays, and all of these support the short-term usage of treatment of 5 days in treatment of mild to moderate COVID-19 in adults. This is the FDA presentation I'm showing you. This is the mutation assay. There was an equivocal results which are not clear or positive results. Then again, transgenic mutant, no increase in mutation frequency in liver and bone marrow proliferating tissues. Now, with this, the FDA was convinced to allow the innovator company to undertake the phase 1 to 3 clinical trials. And just to see the phase 1 study, the pharmacokinetic properties are well understood. It is rapidly absorbed, converted to NHC, just mentioned. No expected drug-drug interaction. Not a substrate, not an inhibitor, not an inducer of any major metabolic enzymes or inhibitor. No expected effect on renal or hepatic impairment on the pharmacokinetics. Phase 1 study, it was seen that exposure increases dose proportionally. There is a very limited accumulation after 12-hour dosing with an effective half-life of 3.5 hours. Limited renal elimination, no meaningful effect of food on pharmacokinetics, so it can be given irrespective of the fasting or fed state, and less than twofold effect on demographic intrinsic factors. Now, this is the schema of studies that have been done by the innovator company, right from the healthy volunteer phase 1 studies to phase 2 studies, 130, 204 patients, then phase 2, 1, 2 by 2, and 2 studies in both mild and moderate, mild and inpatient, so outpatient and inpatient COVID-19 patients. The move-in and the move-out study are the most the final phase 2 and 3 studies. The move-in, move-out study was the outpatient study with mild to moderate COVID-19, especially in the older adults. The above 60 years were also allowed in this study, and with risk factors, with 800 milligram twice daily for 5 days. In phase 2, there were other dosages tried, 200, 400, and 800, but in phase 3, in 1,433 patients, 800 twice daily was tried against placebo. These have been completed, and this led to the approval for the mild to moderate COVID-19 in US FDA. The inpatient study was also conducted, but is completed, but it was not it was stopped in between because there was no major difference in the death or hospitalization. I mean, the mortality parameters were absorbed. So accordingly, so this led to approval in multiple countries. Yeah, UK was the first to approve this product, followed by the US FDA. Australia has granted provisional determination. It is on its way to approval. And WHO United Statement on MPP licensing agreement for molnupiravir has resulted in licensing of this drug from the innovator to multiple companies, including Indian companies, by direct technology transfer. India has got restricted emergency use authorization on 20th December 2021. These are the US FDA approvals. This is the Europe. Merck announced that UK has approved it, and then the EMA approval on the Lagevrio brand. This is the Indian approval for the product for our organization, but there were other companies which have also approved for treatment of adult patient with COVID-19 with SpO2 more than 93%, have a high risk of progression of disease, including hospitalization and death. Basically, mild patients who have increased risk of hospitalization and death. So it is a direct technology transfer as per the licensing agreement. So we also conducted the preclinical studies in acute study where no in single dose acute study and with observation for 14 days. No mortality or adverse clinical signs were observed throughout the experimental period. Animals were found normal during detailed clinical examination. And based on our result, there was a maximum tolerated dose is greater than 2000 standard 2000 milligram per kg. So 28-day study was also conducted in both rats and non-rodent species, the rabbits. It has been seen that there was no mortality, no change in body weight, feed consumption, or hematology parameters, or blood smear, or clinical chemistry parameters throughout the study. In similar findings were seen in the New Zealand rabbits, where there was no mortality, adverse clinical signs, or hematological changes. There were small changes observed in bleeding time, which were not correlative to hematology parameters. So based on our findings, the NOEL value were quite high for the human consumption, 825 with the rats and 415 with the New Zealand rabbits. This corroborated with the much higher dosage of which has been used in clinical practice. So in clinical, mild COVID-19 study was first, as has been already mentioned, the subject expert committee, which is comprising of senior clinical physicians, experts, HODs, professors of the various medical colleges. And they first asked us to revise the clinical trial. And we did that, and we went ahead and we got the approval for the clinical trial on 18th May 2021, with the conditions that additional RT-PCR tests should be done on 5, 10, 15. They restricted our population to less than 60 years, which was not the case with global. Sample size was also told to be more than 1200. So in that case, this was similar for all other organizations, and 1200 patients were asked for every company which went ahead with for the approval. CTRI is mandatory with the ICMR, and there we got the approval to go ahead on 23rd of May with the protocol which was approved by the CDSU. Multiple institutional ethics committees have approved the study. There are about 25 committees, out of which 23 companies. So these are like all the have been put here. So after these ethics committees got approved, we started the mild study. We also got approval for the moderate COVID-19 study with the similar conditions, where only moderate patients, 90 to 93% SpO2 patients would be taken. And again, it was registered with the CTRI and all the ethics committee approvals were obtained. Now, coming to the results of mild COVID-19, just to mention that this study was the only completed study in India which had attained the primary endpoint. The primary endpoint being rate of hospitalization up to day 14, and secondary endpoint being proportion of patients with clinical improvement as per WHO clinical improvement scale at the end of 5 days, end of day 10 and day 14, time to clinical improvement from randomization up to day 14, and mortality rate at day 14. The other secondary endpoints were rate of the RT-PCR negativity at day 5, day 10, and day 14, cycle threshold value at day 5, day 10, and day 14, and treatment emergent adverse events, and also proportion of patients discontinued the study due to adverse events. These were the endpoints of the secondary endpoint of the study. It was a randomized multicenter parallel comparative study where molnupiravir 800 milligram orally twice daily, along with standard of care, was one arm, and the second arm had standard of care alone. 1,218 patients were randomized, that is 609 in each arm, approximately 23 major sites across the country. And these are the sites, as you can see, there are plenty of government sites, about 9 of them, and then there are private sites. Though it looks like the number of private sites are more, but actually the recruitment was such that the government sites contributed more than 70% of the patients. The inclusion criteria, as we had just mentioned, the main were the more than 18 to 60 years age with mild COVID-19, symptomatic positive SARS-CoV test result less than 2 days prior to study entry, and symptom duration less than 5 days study entry. Randomized open label because standard of care had multiple drugs, So we could not blind them, but there was central randomization. So neither the investigator would know which arm the patient would go into. Primary endpoint being rate of hospitalization from day randomization up to day 14. Secondary endpoint with clinical improvement, mortality, RT-PCR negativity, and treatment emergent adverse events. These are further description of that. The patients with moderate disease, severe liver disease, which ALT, AST more than 5 times upper limit of normal, active hepatitis B, HIV, all the screenings were done prior to study entry. Patients who have already taken any nucleoside or nucleotide analogs or immunosuppressive treatments, patients with acute pancreatitis, renal impairment, pregnant or lactating women with negative serum pregnancy test, and have participated in any other clinical trial within less than 30 days prior to study entry, whether it is COVID-19 study or non-COVID-19 or other studies. Standard of care, as per the ICMR guideline 22 April, symptomatic management are hydration, antipyretic, antitussive, multivitamins, ivermectin, and inhalational budesonide if it were persisted beyond 5 days. But since they were within 5 days, most of them did. None of them required inhalational budesonide in the standard of care. So as I was just mentioning, the enrollment in the government institutes out of 1200 were 740, whereas 478 came from the private institutes. These are the baseline characteristics of molnupiravir versus standard of care, where there were similar baseline characteristics in terms of the patient distribution. As you can see, the average age has been 35 to years, which is very different from what is internationally published. Internationally, it is more than 60 years, where they have shown improvement and where they have shown benefit. We are looking at a much younger patient in these studies. We did have comorbidities in certain patients, but not specifically done. But yes, there were obesity, diabetes mellitus, and hypertension in some patients. There were also time symptom onset, where all of them are less than 5 days. RT-PCR were done within 48 hours. The patient was taken. Mean cycle threshold value was 25. So, but then there were variations. Standard of care provided multivitamins, ivermectin, and budesonide only about 10 patients in each arm. But then we had risk factors, more than one risk factors, actually 146 patients with overweight, diabetes, and hypertension. And there's also patients were classified by age group 18 to 30, 31 to 40. As you can see, less than 40 contributed to most of the patients, and 50 to 60 there were about one third of the patients. So this is the primary endpoint. The difference in rate of hospitalization between molnupiravir and with standard of care versus standard of care was statistically significant at the end of day 14, with molnupiravir 800 mg showing superiority over standard of care alone in patients with mild COVID-19 disease at post-treatment up to day 14. So as you can see, this is the so 9 patients versus 26 patients. That's actual. Next, coming to also there was a mortality reduction by 3 percentage points. Mortality risk reduction through day 29. This is that of the innovator. So comparably, as you can see, Indian data was quite significant in terms of superiority over standard of care and comparable to that of the innovator. Proportion of patients with clinical improvement. This is sort of the secondary endpoints. At day 5, as you can see, by the day 5, almost all patients showed clinical improvement. 80% patients showed clinical improvement. By day 10, 95% showed clinical improvement. And so, as you can see, there was superiority of molnupiravir arm right from the day 5 itself and day 10. So, very early clinical improvement has been seen, both in, as you can see, there are ITT population as well as the per protocol population. And this is the actual numbers that has been seen. Similarly, this is comparable to that of the Merck study, where 11-point ordinal scale shows largest improvement at day 10. We also seen largest improvement at day 10. And then again, the clinical improvement with at least one risk factor. As you can see, again, a similar pattern at day 5 and day 10, which showed the maximum improvement with molnupiravir SOC alone. So most of the patient had already improved by day 10, whereas it took another 5 days for the standard of care alone to take to improve. And these are the actual numbers. As you can see, day 120 versus 39. These are only the risk factor analysis. Next is the clinical improvement age group wise. As you can see, all the age groups showed a similar pattern by majority improved by day 5 and day 10, and in all the age groups, whether it is 18 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and as well as 51 to 60. And these are the actual numbers which have been put in the graph in terms of percentages. Time to clinical improvement, median time to clinical improvement is 6 days in molnupiravir plus standard of care group compared to 10 days in standard of care group alone, showing statistically significant superiority in molnupiravir plus standard of care alone, standard of care group. RT-PCR negativity, this is a very stark difference. Again, by day 5, 77% of the patients had already undergone RT-PCR negativity in molnupiravir plus standard of care group. By day 10, 91% patient had undergone RT-PCR negativity. Similarly, in both MITT as well as the per protocol population. So it is statistically significant and early. So the important thing is it's earlier and superior negativity rates observed in the molnupiravir plus standard of care group compared to standard of care group alone. And the viral load also shown similar benefits, greater change with the day 5 versus and day 10 compared to that of the standard of care alone. And this is the earlier RT-PCR negativity and reduction in viral load. This two are very significant because that also prevents it from going to severe state. Here you can see the similar parameters that we have seen with the global data with that of the innovator. The adverse events, the only major adverse events were headache, vomiting, somnolence, etc. Which, I mean, any drug, for that matter, if you like in pharmacology, what is the adverse event? Headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and somnolence. So these are the only thing that was seen with molnupiravir plus SOC group, and it was similar to that of the standard of care alone. These are the further list of with rare to very rare, common to very rare. So as just mentioned, as per the earlier graph, the headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, etc. were seen, and very uncommonly some rashes were also observed. So the the conclusion from this study is that the primary endpoint overall 1.84% patient are hospitalized in molnupiravir group versus statistically significantly higher number of patients who were hospitalized in standard of care group alone. This was statistically significant at day 14, and so molnupiravir 800 mg twice daily for 5 days with standard of care shown superiority was standard of care alone in patients with mild COVID-19 in the rate of hospitalization post treatment up to day 14. The secondary endpoint also shown superiority in almost every parameter. Proportion of patient with 2-point decrease in WHO clinical progression were superior at day 5, day 10, and day 14 compared to the standard of care alone. Medium time to clinical improvement was much earlier with molnupiravir. Although no deaths were observed in both the treatment. Rates of SARS-CoV-2 RT-PCR negativity were earlier with and complete by day almost complete by day 10 by 92% showing compared to 72% with standard of care alone. Similar number of adverse events were seen in both the arms. Headache and nausea were the two most commonly reported adverse events, followed by somnolence and diarrhea, which were all mild in severity and resolved completely. So molnupiravir 800 milligram capsule twice daily, 200 milligram 4 times capsules given four capsules twice daily for 5 days, reduced hospitalization rate superior to standard of care alone in mild COVID-19. RT-PCR attained negativity was attained earlier and higher number of patients compared to standard of care alone. Safety of molnupiravir, that is, the adverse events are similar to standard of care alone. This established the use of molnupiravir 800 milligram twice daily for 5 days in mild COVID-19. It will decrease the hospitalization rate, it will decrease the morbidity, and earlier RT-PCR negativity compared to standard of care alone with similar safety profile. This was presented to the COVID-19 the SEC committee. They asked for the risk factor data which we have presented in this earlier slide, which further analyzed, and we were allowed to be approved, and this is the approval on 28th December. On the approval on mild COVID-19 was that for treatment of adult patients with COVID-19 with SpO2 more than 93% or high risk of progression to the disease, including hospitalization or death. So this is the data, but as you can see that the difference with innovator is that innovator had higher age group patients whereas we had a younger age group patient. So combined together, you can actually give it for the entire range of the adult age group. And there were some not authorized for patients more than 18. Therefore, it has to be given for initiation of treatment in patient requiring immediate due to so hospitalization patient will not be given if for use longer than 5 months. So it is only for 5 days. Unlike other antiviral, which is there for 14 days of approval, it is not meant for prevention of COVID-19 for pregnant women, and contraception needs to be practiced. But these are also based on the preclinical study that have been. So the preclinical study also did not demonstrate any short-term effect on fertility or pregnancy. There was another study which was moderate COVID-19 study. This was not completed, but then because even Merck had to abandon their study in between because in severe patients they did not find significant improvement in their primary endpoint. However, we at the same time we got this approval for moderate COVID-19 where primary endpoint was similar, that proportion of patients with clinical improvement at day 14, whereas secondary endpoints were patients with clinical improvement at day 18, time to clinical improvement, mortality rate and hospitalization rate, RT-PCR negativity. Phase 3 clinical trial, same dosage of 800 milligram twice daily with standard of care. But we could complete up till 100 patients. Since we were licensed with the innovator, we did not go ahead further beyond 100 patients, but we have data of those patients as well. And these are some of the centers which have been which have undergone the study. And
Sina, your time is almost over.
Yes, 2 more minutes. Yeah. So 50 patients of molnupiravir standard of care and 50 patient needs. So proportion of patient with 2-point decrease in WHO clinical improvement were 90%, 98%, and at the end of 5 days, 10 days, and 14 days with molnupiravir group. And this is superior to that of the standard of care alone. Similar has been seen with the proportion of patients with 2-point decrease. A median time to clinical improvement was 7 days and 9 days in the moderate group, where it was 6 days and 10 days in the milder group. Mortality rate, no deaths were reported. RT-PCR negativity, as you can see, followed a similar pattern in the moderate group also. The RT-PCR values were also higher in the molnupiravir, and the CT values were also higher. All adverse events are mild and severity and resolved completely. So the primary endpoint, proportion of patients with 2-point decrease in clinical improvement were 90%, 98%, 98% end of treatment of day 5, day and day 14 when molnupiravir group compared to 50%, 80% at day 5 and day 10. Difference. So there is a superiority here. The difference in time to proportion of clinic patients undergoing clinical improvement will show statistically significant superiority, medium time to clinical improvement, which earlier, RT-PCR negativity were earlier, PCT, the viral load cycle threshold values were also higher in molnupiravir group, and all adverse events were mild in severity and resolved completely. So that led to the we did not complete that study, but we continued with this approval. We provided the fact sheet for for both healthcare professionals as well as that of the which mentions all of the preclinical data as has been presented by the innovator to the FDA, with warnings and precaution not to be given for pregnant or lactating women or for the less than 18 years age. Patients and caregivers will also have a similar FAQ there. We also are continuing to do a phase 4 study for at least 1,000 patients in the active pharmacovigilance program, and there is also this study of the mild SARS-CoV-2 has been approved for a presentation in the CROI conference in February. It has also been near approval for one of the leading journals internationally. It will come out probably in this month. So this is all that I had to present for the Indian research data as well as with a view to the global research data for molnupiravir. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sina, for an excellent presentation. I think there have been a lot of questions from the audience and also from Dr. Ashwini. So over to Ashwini.
So one question, very nice deliberation, and I guess you have clarified the doubts regarding the mutagenicity by giving a good preclinical data, pre-study data. 14 days clinical improvement in placebo arm and in the intervention arm was more or less same. So what difference exactly it will make if we calculate day 5 and day 10 improvement, if your 14 days improvement is going to be same?
Yeah, so the main thing is that, and I will like Dr. Kumaraswamy to come in here as well. The main thing is that the number of patients who had improved by day 10 were about 92%. So thereby, all of the patients are already improved. All of the patients had already shown the various improvements in the RT-PCR, the clinical improvement. So, so the most significant is the day 5 and day 10 because it's the earlier clinical improvement. If yes, by day 14 it has become the same because the number of patients were low in case of the molnupiravir standard of care arm, but standard of care arm, bulk of the patients improved by day 14, whereas these were improved by day 5 and day 10.
Yeah, I can add on a little bit here, Dr. Sinha. So I think this is a very important question on looking at this data. If you look into many of those clinical trial data, even in COVID disease, even with other molecules, as well as with symptomatic medications, you may see similar things after 14 days. So also, if you look into the pathogenesis studies before any of those interventions available in COVID, if you see this, if you put everyone together who are presented to the outpatient clinic, either they are asymptomatic or mild, the risk to progression to hospitalization or to mortality was around 5 to 8%. This I'm talking about 18 years to 90 years old altogether. But again, in those pathogenesis studies, if you further classify 60 plus, what are those risks to hospitalization? This I'm talking about before the intervention on monoclonal antibodies or any of those antivirals, was around 15 to 20%. Again, in the subset of 60 plus with comorbids, with diabetes, hypertension, immunosuppression, it was up to 30%. This I'm talking about the global data, not just Indian data alone, globally, where we have that. That's a risk to progress without any intervention, particularly with comorbidities. Now here again, in this particular clinical trial, what we have found in the disease, as beautifully presented by Dr. Sinha, where we could
Dr. Kumaraswamy, it seems we have lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. So, again, if you look into this data, 77% in people versus who had taken molnupiravir versus 29% on the 5th day, now who had clinical improvement, and 93% versus 58% on the 10th day, because these are the most important period where you're intervening, not on 14 days or 15 days. Now, if we can prevent this progression at this time, you can prevent hospitalization or mortality. particularly in people who have got a risk factor to progress. I think that's something which is out of this study, which will be helpful in our clinical practice, how we can disrupt this disease progression. And also one other thing I should tell you, not everyone have shown this data, but in this clinical trial we found, and based on this now, the innovator Merck has already developed another clinical trial. So which is on, when you looked into this data, there is a reduction in the viral load and also clearance in the 5th day, which is statistical significant, as well as on the 10th day. That is very important, particularly in a country like India, where we all live so densely, as well as in a nuclear family, where we can also disrupt community prevention. Now, this I'm using the word, this can disrupt. I'm sure Chandrakant will, jump on soon on this during our panel discussion on that. But I'm just telling you, we don't have a clear data that whether it will prevent community transmission by disrupting early. But there is a trial now being planned, it's been recruiting now. So if you extrapolate from our learning from other viral diseases, particularly from HIV, where if you reduce a viral load, we had prevented transmission to their partners. Similarly here, if we can disrupt and reduce a viral load much earlier, I personally feel as an infectious disease specialist and as well as a physician involved in managing viral diseases, there could be a reduction in transmission. These are some of those takeaways from this largely conducted multi-site study in pan-India, where we can take it to our clinical practice.
Agree. So if I could say the more implication or more benefit will be on viral load reduction and infectivity part of it rather than the clinical progression, particularly when we are thinking of Omicron as compared to Delta, because this was studied more for Delta, I guess.
Yeah.
At that time, Omicron was not there.
Yeah, the timing of the study was such that at that time, Delta was the prevalent virus. Even today, Delta has not gone away. I think 20% of the infections are still Delta, although Omicron is increasing. But Delta is a more severe form, and it's important that this virus gets inhibited. And there's also a mix of other viruses. It has been studied. So if it has been seen in alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, and other strains, and it is unlikely that it will not be effective in Omicron. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll tell you, all the pathogenesis, if you look into this, is all related to viremia. So, and of course, we have seen Delta such a virulent one. Now Omicron considered to be less virulent. I won't say not at all virulent, less virulent. We still see patients getting hospitalized. We do not know what's going to happen the next variant, which is already there or in the process of emerging. If you look into all those pathogenesis, and if you take other diseases, other viral diseases or bacterial diseases, it's all related to the quantum of those microorganisms. So the minute when you have a higher viremia, there is chance of upregulating more cytokines stimulations, so which can lead to more hospitalizations and more morbidity and mortality. I think disrupting that viral pathogenesis very early and reducing the viral load should be the whole objective of this future management. Thereby, we can disrupt hospitalization, we can disrupt transmission. That probably I feel not only with this molnupiravir, we may see a lot of future antivirals, which is now on the verge of coming up in the next few months.
Right. Last one question. What is the data on diabetes? Because MOVE trial, diabetic, they didn't find significant benefit. And next question is, are you people also doing trial with molnupiravir in vitro? I read recently they have done in vitro trial with molnupiravir and letermetravir. So, and they have found a synergistic efficacy. So, is there something ongoing?
So in vitro trials, the innovator has in vitro studies have been already completed, and they were submitted to FDA as per the FDA regulations. So separate studies on, as you're saying, synergistic studies with other antivirals, yes, that is underway, but that is not yet submitted or published anywhere. Because Kumarasamy sir again will come in. Like in HIV, you have it started with a single drug and then went into other combined therapies, which might be the case in the future with this disease as well. But there might be combined HIV and antiviral therapies. The only problem is the practice is very not very same across the, even the guidelines are also very divergent. So we need to first synchronize the guidelines and say that these are required. And this is based on data. We're not, as mentioned, that even for not just this drug, any antiviral drugs, when there is a viral load reduction required, there is an antiviral. So yeah, so Dr. Kumarasamy, about the combination.
Yeah, so I think you brought a very important point, Dr. Sinha here. So we have seen this in HIV by giving combination. We have seen in hepatitis C where a combination of two drugs can eradicate hepatitis C. We have seen in tuberculosis giving a combination therapy has got a better effect. Now, similarly, now it is too early to comment anything on, in the COVID on therapeutics, because we're just the beginning. We never had any intervention till a few months back. So now the only available, I'm just talking about the mild disease or asymptomatic who can progress. So the only tools we have is right now, which is approved by the US FDA and been part of one of those US NIH guidelines, but some of the countries are in the process of adapting. Now we have an antiviral called Paxlovid. I'm sure we'll discuss more during the panel discussion. Currently not available in India, where the trial data have shown up to 89% reduction in hospitalization, which is a very powerful drug, but not available in India. I'm sure now Petro has been in the process of developing this. It might be available soon. And we do have a monoclonal antibody, Sovatromab, not the one currently available in India, region 4, which we have used a lot for the earlier variant. For the current variant, it's very clear that that monoclonal antibody will not be helpful. So you need to use Sovatromab, which is not available in India. So again, using monoclonal antibody from our own experience on using on our patients in the past, as well as conducting clinical trial using monoclonal antibody in a country like India, in an outpatient practice, it's so difficult, because you need to have a place to give an infusion and monitoring, and with the cost and everything on a large public scale, in a small clinic, small sophisticated executive clinic you can do, but on a large mass, it might be difficult. And third intervention we have is Remdesivir, which we used a lot for our inpatients, but now we have some data from our outpatients. If we give a 3-day course, 200 milligram on day 1, 100 milligram on day 2, and 100 milligram day 3, it's got some effect. But again, the issue being in India being, you have to bring the patient 3 days to the hospital as a daycare to do that. It might be, again, very difficult on a large scale to do, but the data shows up to 60% reduction in hospitalization. And the only other tool we have is a molnupiravir, where again, Merck data shows 39%. And now with the hetero data, we saw that up to 50 to 60%. So if you give all those, the current tool right now in India, which can be readily given, have some benefit. Again, this is not a magic bullet to completely cure molnupiravir, cure COVID disease, but we have a tool which can disrupt the pathogenesis, prevent hospitalization. Anything from 39% to 60% is molnupiravir. Again, this particular drug, I'm sure everybody has seen in the media, where some reports on adverse effects and everything, and all those things. So I may, a little debate on that, the particular wordings on the adverse effects, especially on teratogenicity and cartilage. Again, FDA, US FDA very clearly recommended, as well as the Indian regulator DCGI, is not recommended in pregnant women. The package insert very clearly shows it. Hence, that teratogenicity here, this is out of question on that. So, and second, about the cartilage. As we all know as clinicians, the cartilage development all starts much early. We are not recommending this anyone beyond 18 years of age. Right now the recommendations on 60 plus or 45 plus with any comorbidities who have a risk to develop. So those set toxicities which are being given, it's been out of question. Another thing I'll tell you as a clinician who had used a lot of antivirals in my practice, particularly in HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and several disorders. This molnupiravir, if you look into the structure, which is said by Dr. Sinha, in a way that it neither inhibits any of those CYP enzymes or induce. So I think we all know that pharmacologically, these are very important enzymes which really causes this toxicity, stimulate the toxicities or drug-drug interactions. And again, in a patient with COVID, with 60 plus, they may have a polypharmacy. They can have a statins. They can have so many antihypertensives. They can be on metformin. They can have an insulin. They can have in so many of sitagliptin or so many other fancy drugs which we use in our clinical practice, including HIV, many of those protease inhibitors and other dolutegravir. This one particular drug, because it doesn't inhibit or induce it, which has got no till now identifiable drug-drug interaction, which is much safer, which is something is very important for us, especially 60 plus with the polypharmacy. So one again being 800 milligram twice daily, the current formulation is 200 milligram. So 4 tablet in the morning, 4 tablet in the night, which itself is in a little pill burden, but I think the way you counsel a patient just for 5 days, I think that's something is important. We cannot throw away such intervention, which has got some benefit in preventing a death, preventing a hospitalization, and because of those unwanted toxicity allegations being given. We have done the clinical trial, and I have been using this in very large number of patients of clinical practice since it has been available. And I have not seen anything which is untoward, except there are very small percentage of complaint about the pill burden, but otherwise it's been much
even that will be taken care. Like there is an 800 milligram tablet being developed, and very soon that will be there in the Indian Indian.
I'm sure you already planned that. Yeah, thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, Joshi sir, please.
Ashwin, can I make a comment?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Can I make a comment, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. The move out trial actually showed that it caused only 3% reduction in hospitalization and deaths, and this is a very small number. And as compared to what any 1 or 2 events here and there, it would have been non-significant. And second thing is we have more potent antiviral drugs like remdesivir in the Pine Tree study showed 87% reduction. And we have in the pipeline now Paxlovid, which has an 89% reduction. And the study, most importantly, this study on molnupiravir has been done in unvaccinated people. And if you actually do it in vaccinated people, and now the Omicron variant, which is now the predominant variant, the effect size would further reduce much more. And therefore, and if you see the subgroup analysis, it actually the point estimates favored the placebo in patients who had mild viral load and those who were previously infected and had antibodies, and in diabetic patients. And though they were not statistically significant, and it has a significant genotoxicity, mutotoxicity, and teratogenicity, and these side effects would only become evident when they are used in large scale. And it is because of this reason that there is that because this drug is available over the counter and has the potential to become what Favipiravir became the drug in the second wave with no proven benefits. And it is because precisely for this reason that central agencies like ICMR and AIMS Delhi have actually not recommended and included them in there, and have cautioned very strongly against the use of molnupiravir so that it is not misused. Regarding the side effects, it's very important to understand that for one clinical event or side event or adverse event to occur, we need a very large sample size, and a very large post-marketing surveillance only will reveal it. If a sample size of, say, an event which is adverse event, which is of 1 in 40,000, would get clinically manifest only with a sample size of 1.2 lakhs, and which might be very important subsequently. So it is only post-marketing surveillance which would reveal the real dangers of mutagenicity and teragenicity, and it has the potential to produce further mutants, and because of viral mutants, and it will, because of these safety reasons, ICMR has not included it in the guidelines, and therefore we should give a very clear message that molnupiravir is not a magic drug, and it should not be used so far as the central agencies and central guidelines of Government of India actually recommends it.
So can we
Any comments on what I've said?
Yes, sir. First, Dr. Kumaraswamy, then I will respond.
So I heard what you said. I know the discussion. So with all those available data and with the committees which have recommended based on all those deliberations and with the FDA decisions, I think I may disagree with some of those points. Again, I said at the beginning, after the hearing Dr. Sinha's presentation on this data, this is definitely not a magic bullet. We never so far have any magic bullet to completely cure COVID, or we even don't have a magic bullet of vaccine which can prevent, all those thought to do slow down the disease progression. Again, having said this, and after seeing all those pathogenesis studies, if there is an intervention which can disrupt the pathogenesis, prevent hospitalization, I think in a setting like when it is available, which is easy to take, we should use this. Coming to the toxicities and everything I think deliberated, that is not true, sir, based on all those trials, even the Merck's trial and as well as the data submitted to the FDA. FDA is the toxicity board reviewed and everything. Definitely it is not being studied in pregnant women, not been studied in very younger age population where before these cartilage development has been continued. So coming to those emergence of drug resistance strains, which there is a question had been put, no one knows. But based on the way it works on the pathogenesis, it is unlikely to develop a resistance in this 5-day course. But on the other hand, in this 5-day, it can disrupt the pathogenesis, reduce the viral load, reduce hospitalization, the job is done. I think then by the time the immune system will take care of remaining stuff. I think that's something if we can choose patients, not everybody in a public health setting. Someone 60 plus with comorbidities, as a clinician individually, you feel they may progress. Someone who is immunosuppressed, where someone who has got multiple comorbidities irrespective of the age, we know that from our earlier experience on managing these patients in the last 18 months may progress. I think if we use it and disrupt, I think probably that's the right thing you're doing as a clinician to your patient. I think you have to individualize this patient and choose it, and based on that recommendation should be done at your level.
Why has AIIMS and central government not recommended it?
So I think, this is too early now to comment anything on that. There could be more and more discussions might come up, and based on that, there could be a subpopulation might be recommended, anytime soon. And from that, the scale up will start happening.
So so I would like to respond to the preclinical again. I have already demonstrated in the presentation that there has been this entire preclinical data has been evaluated by the FDA. Only then they allowed them to patients. They were undergoing a patient study. In the preclinical study, there were no genotoxicity found, no chromosomal damage. Reproductive toxicity were seen at 1,000 times the therapeutic dosage. The in vivo mutagenetic studies did not show the toxicities that have been talked about. The next part is that the bone plate increase, the effect on growth plate not seen at 1 month. It is increased at 3 months only, and this change in growth plate is not relevant to human adults. So therefore, and then the bone marrow and hematopoietic toxicity, there was only in one species in dog after 2 weeks of continued exposure at a very 10 times the therapeutic dose. It has been seen, not seen in the other species. So there is a data which it shows that there are concerns, but it does not concerning in the use in adult patients, especially in non-pregnant and in non-pregnant females. Secondly, the risk factor study was done in the US, and Indian studies were different. US studies were done in elderly patients in risk factor with a high risk factors, who underwent the primary endpoint may hospitalization, but there are other endpoints like clinical improvement. There are RT-PCR negativity as well as the CT value load. Indian studies were not in the elderly age group, it was in younger population. And significantly, the RT-PCR negativity, clinical improvement much earlier. So also the approval was not based on a haphazard process. It was done by a very renowned subject expert committee with senior professors and HODs, even including AIIMS professors and the subsurgeon, all of the senior professors and HODs. And they have evaluated the data over. We didn't get in one meeting. We had to present the data over 2-3 meetings and present data with us also in subset population of risk factor patient, as well as so the other part is among all antiviral drugs in COVID-19, this is the maximum studied drug. Yeah, it is not a frivolously studied, unlike favipiravir, where here it is 6,000 Indian patients have been studied in India. Abroad, it has been nearly 2,000 patients, which have been, after which FDA gave approval. In India,
Sina, we are actually
Yeah, so these are the various reasons why it is still under discussion, and ICMR is a research body, not a guideline body, ideally. But the subject expert committees also comprises of multiple senior experts, which are equally cognizant of these risks that have been put forward. So this is my submission. Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Now to Ashwini to sum up.
Yeah. So thanks, Dr. Sanjay, for a wonderful elaborate lecture and clearing our doubts. This is really a promising molecule. We are yet to have more data on it, definitely, but I don't think we should lose this molecule all of a sudden just because of few controversies. Even remdesivir had its own controversies in the beginning, and now with FIND-3 and simple studies and all, we are getting to know that it works. So might be with future data, we will know exactly how to place molnupiravir in overall COVID practice. Forget about just Omicron, for the future variants also, because we know future variants will keep cropping up. So thanks a lot, Dr. Sinha, for a wonderful lecture. And I hand over mic to the MOC for further proceeding ahead. Because we had a hot panel discussion, because there are a lot of controversies and a lot of doubts with the people. So thanks, and thanks for inviting us, Sami and Murli sir, here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murli sir and Dr. Ashwini. And now we move ahead to the last part of today's session, the panel discussion. And I invite all the eminent panelists, Dr. Chandrakant Laharia, Dr. Shubhadeep Saha, Dr. N. Kumaraswamy, and Dr. Rajesh Kosavi. The moderator for this session will be Dr. Milind Bhushundi. Dr. Milind Bhushundi, he is the director of Central India Institute of Infectious Diseases and Research, Nagpur, and he is also the director and chief of HIV unit, Lata Mangeshkar Hospital, Nagpur, and he is an active member of COVID task force. He is an alumnus of GMC Nagpur. He has been bestowed upon the
Mina, you can just skip this thing. We are already running short of time.
Yeah. Okay. So, and well-known figure of Nagpur, and I hand over the floor to Dr. Milind Bhushundi sir for further proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So welcome all. After such a wonderful deliberation on vaccination as well as on the new drug, the molnupiravir, here comes now the main important thing, and that is going to be the panel discussion. For panel discussion, we already listened to two panelists, Dr. Sinha as well as Dr. Laharia. I will be basically introducing you the two eminent speakers. The first and foremost is a very, very close friend of mine, and he is none other than Dr. N. Kumaraswamy. Dr. Kumaraswamy is, whatever here is written is very, very less for him. He has been to the ID for now more than 25-30 years. He is my mentor also, and I have done a lot of research trials under him. He is one of the very influential consultant in WHO, and most of the guidelines which have been formulated for infectious disease, basically the HIV, HBV, HCV, and he is one of the most important person in those. Recently, we had a second line trial, and that is from the ACTG, that is the AIDS clinical trial group, where he is one of the he is spearheading one of the important the research now. He basically is the chief and director of the Voluntary Health Services Infectious Diseases Medicine Center at Chennai, and he is also the National COVID Task Force member and for the clinical research and treatment. and more than 400, I will be saying there are peer-reviewed scientific medical journals he has published, and many trials. He has been one of the most important and a very good and humble human being. You already have listened to him. The second panelist is Dr. Rajesh Gustavi. He was my teacher. I have worked under him as a house officer, and then as a registrar, and then as a lecturer. Presently, he is a professor of medicine, and we all know Dr. Gosavi, how he has spearheaded the in first and second both the waves. And I used to remember his sentence always. Whenever I used to ask him, "Sir, aap ye kaisa kar lete ho? How you are going to how you are doing it?" So he used to say, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf." And this is what exactly describes Dr. Gosavi. So with this, I start the panel discussion on COVID-19 vaccination and medication. We are only talking about vaccination. Prevention first starts with none other than us, and that is what exactly is the CAP, that is a COVID appropriate behavior. We should all follow that thing, and then comes the vaccination. So the masking, COVID appropriate behavior is going to be the first and foremost of the prevention aspect. Vaccination will be the second. For medication, we do have a lot of medicines available. There are certain controversies. We have already discussed most of them because you must have seen the discussion and deliberations during the vaccination and molnupiravir. So most of the questions have been asked. But just to ask, just to tell you about the present status, it is really bad. But if you see here the number of new cases, what Dr. Laharia has already told you, that the number of deaths are very less in this particular wave. India is near about same. But if you see here, Dr. Kumar, are you there?
Yes.
Dr. Kumar, yeah. Yes. This is the latest graph which I wanted to show it to you, and your comments on that, basically in on the Germany, United Kingdom, USA, and Israel.
So I think, we have been seeing globally in the last 2 to 3 weeks time, the numbers have been, increasing, and it is attributable due to the new strain, the Omicron, which also been now studied to find that higher transmissibility. So I think coupled with multiple factors, not only with the transmissibility of this variant, but also because we are relaxed on month back, we relaxed all our restrictions, and people are traveling around, and festivals, and so many large gatherings. All those coupled together probably cause these, huge that you appropriately put up very clearly that we should never get away from our COVID appropriate behavior. I think if we can stick to that, probably we can slow down the next waves. Otherwise, whatever interventions we have vaccines, now we have booster doses. And if you let loose our guard on, COVID appropriate behavior, we'll end up in seeing such a similar waves. And Dr. Laharia very beautifully said during this presentation, vaccines are one thing, which reduces this disease progression, but face mask is the one which prevents the transmission. I think here it's very clearly shows that if we can completely adapt that, probably we may not see, this type of waves.
I would like to have your attention towards Israel. Basically, I wanted to comment on Israel because with high vaccination rate and high seroprevalence, and see the number of cases in Israel.
Right. So you want me to comment, or Dr.
Yeah. I want to comment.
So now Israel, if you take into the country, they are far ahead in vaccination. They're one of the first country who vaccinated all their population of the first dose, second dose, third dose, and now they are already been in the process of almost 40% been vaccinated with their fourth dose. In fact, we have a group of infectious diseases clinicians in Israel. We work together. We had a CME very recently, and very sad they're all into those fourth booster doses. But on the other hand, you can see this number as shown by Dr. Millen, it's been going up. This very clearly shows that vaccines are there not to definitely to prevent this transmission, But on the other hand, that will have huge effect in reducing these, hospitalization. I think if we let loose our COVID appropriate behavior, these whatever booster doses we give, we'll continue to see this.
Yeah, Dr. Gosavi, are you there? Very good morning, Dr.
Good morning,
Gosavi.
Vinny.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah, we are always nowadays everybody is in habit of Omicron. And this is what exactly I got it from January 19, 2022. And if you see here, there are countries like Netherlands and Germany, we still have a Delta. So we don't have a number of data on Delta, the Omicron in India, because we are just looking at the cases and not the infection. There's a difference between the two. So where we stand as far as the Delta and Omicron is concerned?
Actually, when I've gone through some of the articles and etc., what exactly we are dealing in Nagpur, at least, or in Maharashtra, it is very difficult to predict. There are few labs who are reporting near 100% samples as of Omicron. There is a reputed institute in Nagpur. According to their data, there is only 13 to 15% of the Omicrons, or it is detected by S-drop gene test or S-gene drop test they are doing, and data is not more than 15 to 20% Omicron. The rest is all non-Omicron, at least as far as the Nagpur is concerned. Now there will be a kit available, Omicron. With that, there may be some more accuracy, but even with the data of 15%, how much must we have been missed? So I do not think in Nagpur, at least referring to this lab, that we are having still the Delta and other variants, and not only Omicron.
My problem is because most of the people are thinking in terms of Omicron, and Dr. Kumar has already stressed that the monoclonal antibodies, they don't work in Omicron. And that might be a reason that a lot of people thinking that it is Omicron and might not give the monoclonal antibodies. So, Mina, you are there. So you are doing a lot of patients, you are doing a lot of samples, as well as Kumar also. I would like to have your opinion on this regarding the monoclonal antibodies and not so high incidence of Omicron, because we don't have kits to do Omicron.
Actually, in my opinion, if there is a risk to a patient, I mean, with age more than 60 and whatever are the comorbid condition they had described, with immunocompromised conditions and all those everybody knows. And if there is nothing to offer, there is nothing wrong in if a patient is affording and he is accept that there is a risk that if Omicron is there, it may not be effective. But considering our condition in Nagpur and surrounding area, that we are still having more than 80% non-Omicrons, you should go ahead and give the benefit of doubt to the patient, if particularly they are affording. Actually,
what about Dr. Kumar Swami, your opinion?
If we would not have seen these large numbers of Omicron right now in India, it is
Can somebody mute this one? Can the
Okay, right. So I think Dr. Bhushandeh, to your question, before this Omicron wave, now in India, it is thought anything probably, Chandrakant can correct me, it could be anything from 70 to 90% based on the survey done, could be Omicron in India, but we do not know. It could be Delta also. Now I have seen patients last couple of days with, severe lung findings, even hospitalized. Probably I feel probably that could be, Delta. So coming to this monoclonal antibody, we have seen good benefit with the earlier one, what we have currently in India. But again, this very clear sign shows that it's not going to be beneficial with Omicron. And following this, even US FDA is not been recommending the earlier RegionCo, which is currently been available as a combination monoclonal antibody of Kesinimab and Imidimab as a two separate infusions for the newer variant. Instead of that, the one what's been recommended now is called Sovatrumab, which has been very beneficial, and the studies have shown anything from 70 to 80% reduction in hospitality and mortality. But unfortunately, that is not available in India yet. And till now, the manufacturers have not filed their application to the Indian regulator for marketing. Hence, we will not be able to use this in our Indian population. I think to your question, can we give the benefit of doubt to those people who can afford it? I'm not sure. In those individuals, probably if we can quickly get genotyping done, whether it is not Omicron, then probably I may safely give. Otherwise, I may not give that. I may give molnupiravir, which might be anything from 39% to 50% reduction. But on the other hand, there's another drug called Paxlovid, which is in the process of coming to India anytime. When that is available, probably that might be recommended more. At this time, since we don't have that, and I may be a little cautioned to use the earlier monoclonal antibody in mass scale without knowing the genotype.
Thank you very much, Kumar. Now the question is to
Dr.
Laria.
Dr. Milind, may I have our attention or may I have opinion from Dr. Meena about the availability of any test like Omisure, by which we can detect whether there is a Omicron or not in the given patient in a short time, because sequencing is not possible in a very short period of time.
Yeah. Sir, actually today morning itself, I talked to Dr. Varsha Poddar madam also, because most of the samples for genomic sequencing, they are being sent to NIV Pune. So according to her, whatever numbers of samples they have received from all across the Maharashtra, so only Omicron positive cases they have reported, but then still many questions are to be answered, whether how many Delta lineages are there. That is one thing. Then second thing, that in AIIMS Nagpur, we had the TACPath kit, which was detecting the S gene failure. Now our observation was that we have tested almost 750 samples, but out of them, only 14% of them, they are showing the S gene drop. Now we have procured the Omisure kit that we'll start using from tomorrow. So probably Omisure, that will be giving results which are much closer to what genomic sequencing reports can give us. And probably we'll be in a better position to comment upon that, because problem with SGTF kit was that it was detecting only the 2A lineages, but 2B and 2C were missed. So actually we might have missed on some cases of Omicron based on that kit. But let us see what happens with Omisure, and probably we should be able to get more exact figures of Omisure, especially in Nagpur.
How much time it takes for Omisure to be?
Thank you very much, Meena.
It is a RT-PCR kit. It takes 5 to 6 hours. So whatever number of samples are positive, those will be subjecting for Omisure.
Yeah, really a positive note for at least Nagpur. Now the next question goes to Dr. Laria. Dr. Laria, are you there? Dr. Laria?
Yes, yes, sir, I'm there.
A lot of people have joined late, so they might have missed certain points from your. There are a lot of questions on the vaccination, because during that time a lot of people were not able to join. You must be seeing that we have clearly crossed around 1.6 billion doses administered.
Yes, Dr. Prashandi.
Are you happy? That is number one. And number two is they just want. Are you happy with 1.6, or you want more? And the efficacy of the vaccine, as far as India as well as the global things concerned.
Thank you. So I could not hear second part of your question because there was some interruption in the network. So first part I heard that whether I'm happy or what is my response to that. But second part is efficacy in comparison to the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the second question.
Okay, thank you. So the first part is that India definitely had done a very commendable job in administering vaccine to 1.6 billion people. By any standard, this is a good number. More importantly, Of course, a country had some challenge in the first 6 months of vaccination drive. There was far greater demand. There were some policy issues which could have been done better. But there is no point in kind of repeating them. The situation is that now India has far more vaccine supply than demand, and it can fulfill those requirements. That's one. Second is that much of this vaccine was produced in India. Third and most important, in my opinion, the parameter of success of vaccination drive in India is that we know that this was the first time that adult vaccination started for such a large scale. We also know that the vaccine hesitancy is a reality, and many of people who were involved in policy making were thinking that once 60% coverage is achieved, after that it will be really challenging for people to come up for vaccination. So in my opinion, 90% plus adult population coming for first shot is a big success. I don't expect that like it should be 100%. As long as we achieve 90% full coverage, that will be a really, really big success. And we are doing really good in the vaccination drive. I think it is something which the lessons learned from this drive should be used for expanding vaccination coverage of adult population with the existing vaccine. And this is really good.
Thank you very much.
The second part is quickly on the vaccine efficacy. What we need to remember that each of the vaccine in the COVID-19 is very different. I discussed in the early part of this discussion, but key is that irrespective of which vaccine we are using, 78% efficacy or 95% efficacy, this is fairly good range. Like we need to remember again that when COVID-19 vaccines were being developed, the World Health Organization had said that any vaccine which is 50% or higher efficacy, point estimate, but actually they said lower bound of 30% will be a good vaccine. So 78%, 80% efficacy of vaccine is really good. And final point, I would say that though some of the vaccines which are being used in United States, other parts or mRNA-based vaccines, they have a higher efficacy, but we also know that with the time their protection declined very quickly in comparison of the other vaccines which are being used in India. So it comes with the trade-off. And final point is that we should always see in the COVID-19, as you, Dr. Bhushandi, you correctly highlighted, we should always see all intervention as part of the package. We should not be overemphasizing or putting emphasis on just one intervention, be it vaccines, be it masks, or be it treatment. All put together will prevent us and take us out of this pandemic.
Yeah, thank you very much, Larry. Dalaria, there's another like one. Most of the people are asking about the time gap between the first and second in case of Covaxin as well as Covishield as well as a booster. And the second one is the same. You already answered, but these people are late, and that might be below 60 years. Age, and what is the antibodies?
Okay.
Vaccination.
Okay, so the vaccination, the time interval between two shots of Covaxin is 4 to 6 weeks, and Covishield is 12 to 16 weeks. And India has adhered to the longer gap because that is what provides better between the Covishield two shots, because that's what the original study highlighted, that longer the gap, higher the protection is. Alongside, we also need to remember that India started COVID-19 vaccination after the second. Much of the COVID-19 vaccination in India actually accelerated after the second wave. So India's situation is very different. Natural infection followed by vaccination, which provides this combined immunity or hybrid immunity, and which is a good approach. So that's why 3 months interval between two shots of Covishield is the right approach. India is adhering to this, and this is scientific approach. When it comes to the booster dose, of course, it depends upon which vaccine is being used. In scientific terms or immunological terms, to call any subsequent shot after primary immunization as a booster, the minimum interval should be 6 months, because before that you don't call it a really booster. But this in COVID-19 vaccination, some countries even booster dosage as early as 3 months after the primary immunization was completed. But 6 months is minimum. We are waiting for more research to understand that what will be the ideal gap. But India has adopted 9 months on an assumption that it is a longer period. So in India, the precaution shot is being given to the individual once they complete 9 months or 39 weeks after second dose of the primary immunization schedule. Now coming to what was like, there was some disruption. What was the second question, sir, in your? Okay, what I incompletely heard was that this immunocompromised individual, younger than 60 individual. So the idea is that immunocompromised individual, World Health Organization recommend and many experts recommend should receive, irrespective of their age, a third shot. But the challenge in this is that every vaccine third shot in immunocompromised individual is not likely to produce a higher antibody. So there is evidence that if you give mRNA-based vaccine as a third shot, which will result in a better antibody. But whether giving Covishield or Covaxin as third shot in immunocompromised individual will result higher antibody, we really do not know. And third part of your question was about the antibody declining or the antibody and which booster, which were linked to the booster. So what we know that with the mRNA-based vaccine, the antibody decline after 4 months very quickly. But with all vaccines, antibody decline over a period of time. That's a natural process. But what we also know from scientific study that while antibody, the humoral immunity or the antibody part declined over a period of time, longer the gap, antibody decline. But the cellular immunity, the T cell and memory cell based response remain intact. So even after 9 months or a year, so antibody may decline, but cellular response remain intact and person is protected. Here, the another thing is that there are two types of, the majority of antibody measurement, which is done in the laboratory, is done for binding antibodies. But what we are also concerned in these COVID-19 vaccinations is neutralizing antibody. So like what we measure by getting the binding antibody test or normal antibody test is not a good parameter to assess how vaccines are performing. In any case, there is no correlate of protection, the level of antibody which provide protection for COVID-19 vaccine. So merely going by the level of antibody is not very useful. To summarize, key that antibody level will decline, T cell or memory cell will remain intact. In any case, it will be a good idea because the variants are emerging to give a booster and to have a better antibody or stimulate a further additional T cell or B cell. So that's what will be that. But we don't know what India is doing right now. 9-month selected group precaution shot is a good approach. Some studies are going on which will throw additional light and we will have a better understanding of when boosters will be required. I think Dr. Brushundi has...
Dr. Laharia, I have a question for you. The organ transplant recipients who are on immunosuppressants and if they are vaccinated with, say, drugs like inactivated viruses, inactivated viral vaccines or viral vectored vaccines, is there a chance that these vaccines can activate the disease?
So the short answer based upon immunological principle that inactivated vaccines are really safe. So there is no risk. But I would say considering these are newer vaccine, like if they like this would require a little more nuanced research and there might be some studies on from a specific setting which can answer the question more specifically. But short answer is there is almost no risk with the inactivated viral vaccines or the Covaxin type of vaccines, and those can be administered in my opinion. But some data somewhere must have been collected and which can also guide the process.
So this is a very good question, Dr.
Yeah, thank you.
I think what we have seen, in the vaccinology in such immunosuppressed people, particularly in transplant recipients who are on immunosuppressed drugs, when you give any of those killed vaccine, that is inactivated vaccine or live vaccinated vaccine, you're not seeing anything reactivation of the disease. But on the other hand, there could be a lesser antibody response as compared to people with immunocompetent. So here again, one of those carry-home messages, when now we have been recommending this booster dose or precautionary dose, these immunocompromised people, should be given an opportunity to get it quickly, because with the earlier 2 doses, they may not have an adequate antibody response because of their immunosuppression for their body to stimulate the antibody response, as well as some of those immunosuppressant drugs they have been taking. I think here giving a booster will help them to elevate rather than, this virus will activate and causing the disease or not. That's something not been seen, with other vaccines in other diseases.
Thank you.
Sir, there was
thank you, Kumar, for this. Dr. Laharia, another question.
Yes.
Again for you. Dr. Laharia, again, there is a question for you regarding the side effects of the vaccine. Basically, the Covishield.
So, like in India, the Covishield vaccine has been administered to around 127 crore individual. In other countries also, this vaccine is widely being used. So, one of the side effects, like these are very safe, but one of the side effects is that in the younger people, especially younger than 30 years, there is a risk of blood clot formation, thrombocytopenic challenge. I'm forgetting the word. So there is a blood clot formation, and there are some other complications which might develop, and these are more common in the younger population. So, and that is one of the reasons that some countries are not using these vaccines, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, for younger population, younger than 30-year population, and some population younger than 50-year population. But what to remember that this side effect, which is reported more commonly in European setting and then studied by World Health Organization, is lower at the lower rate in Indian setting. So in India, 127 crore shots have been administered. The rate of this particular adverse event is very similar to the baseline in the baseline rate in the population group, but it has been found higher in the European setting, and that's why some of the European settings are not using this vaccine. That's one. Second part is that the rate of adverse events and some blood clotting related challenges are more common in younger than 18 years, and that was one of the adverse event reportedly informed through the media. That's why the clinical trial of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in younger than 18 has been halted and not started after that. Along with that, even in some of the other vaccines, mRNA-based vaccine, there is a myocarditis, especially in adolescent population. So some of these vaccines have a rare adverse events for a specific age group, and that is what is being studied. But when it comes to India, like with Covaxin, no major serious adverse event has been reported. With Covishield also, what has been reported, the blood clot related events which have been reported in a European setting has not been reported from India. So they are fairly safe, so to say. But as we know that this is an ongoing process, and as more data is collected, we will be better informed. Now, this is and the final point is that I am fairly confident that when subject expert committee of CDSCO is asking for a market authorization, the data on various adverse events after vaccination would have been analyzed in more detail, and that's why the market authorization is being recommended.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Laharia. Dr. Kumaraswamy, most of the patient may be because of either or because of Delta. What will be the line of treatment? The course of disease will cure the patient. Morbidity.
So Milind, I didn't hear you properly. I think your internet has been distracting. Can you tell in 3-4 words your question?
The most of the patients are having mild disease. Is it okay to treat them, or the proper monitoring, the patient should become all right? Aged less than 60 years without morbidity.
So I think if I understood very clearly, because I think I have some internet issues, someone who is mild disease less than 60, just monitor them, that's fine. I think that's what we have been doing since last 18 months, closely monitoring. And there are individuals, again, less than 60, there could be a subgroup, particularly 45 plus with diabetes and hypertension and with other risk factors or with HIV or other immunosuppression. because these particular lifestyle diseases like diabetes and hypertension is not just in 60 plus alone. As a clinician, we all know that we have been seeing in younger people, even in 30 plus. They also might have a similar risk like 60 plus to progress. So I think now with this intervention of molnupiravir available, I think the priority should be given with 60 plus who can progress, and 45 plus you have to individualize a patient based on their comorbidities and disease progression, where you can offer an intervention. Today it's molnupiravir, might be in the next few months we have other interventions like Paxlovid and other newer oral antivirals will come up, should be used at this time. I think that to your question, less than 60 plus, I think we have to individualize patient in the clinic rather than doing a mass public health treatment intervention.
Dr. Gosavi.
Yes, Milind.
Your opinion.
You are not audible to me. Opinion on what?
Yeah, I will. Okay, I'll. A person who is less than 60 years with a natural cause of the disease should be allowed with proper monitoring, or he should be treated.
Yeah. With my experience of nearly now in this third wave of around 100 plus patients, most of the patients are vaccinated, particularly a person who is.
Sir, you're not audible.
Sir, you unmute.
Hello, now I'm audible?
Yes, sir.
To sum up the management of a patient who are below 60 years of age without having much comorbid conditions, mild disease, I think you may not use anything. As such, only the symptomatic treatment, even antibiotic, etc. is not required. Even the investigation to begin with is not required unless there is some red flag signs. Actually, if you go in a history of COVID management since beginning of a first wave, we have used all the drugs like SCQS, ritonavir, we have used favipiravir, ivermectin. There was a drug like 2-deoxyglucose drug trial was sponsored by DRDO. And now there is a molnupiravir, nitric oxide spray, etc. We are used everything. But what really was promising in these patients is only remdesivir that works. All other drugs we can give, particularly antivirals, if it is given within first 2 days of symptom onset, then they are really good and effective. On third or fourth day, they may be effective, but once you start the treatment after 4 or 5 days of a symptom onset, these drugs, even if you do not use, doesn't make much of a difference unless patient is deteriorating. And in at least third wave, most of the patients are getting cured or they are symptomatic, particularly for something like a very high degree of myalgia, fever of around 100, 101 degrees Fahrenheit. And there is something like a headache and brain fog, etc. But most of the patients are getting cured without doing anything on the third day. So I think even considering the monoclonal antibody cocktail, you should wait for 3 to 4 days, but should take a decision within 5 days of a symptom onset. This is my personal experience and opinion on all these drugs, what we are using specific or maybe SOCs.
Thank you very much, sir. But why there is, Dr. Laharia, there are lots of vaccines which are going on in the world, but why so much discussion about only the COVID vaccine and why not about the other vaccines?
Well, there has always been discussion on the different vaccines, but these are the challenging times in the pandemic, not only about the vaccines, but even the treatment, therapies, hospitalization, everything is being discussed about COVID-19. But yeah, I broadly understand your point that now is the time when it's a 2 years of pandemic, people have been exposed, developed immunity after natural infection, people have been vaccinated. So now clearly the time that every country, including India and Indian states, start thinking about non-COVID services also. We should not be disrupting non-COVID services anymore, no, even if there is a rise in the cases, that's one. Second is learning from this ongoing COVID-19 vaccination drive. We should be strengthening adverse event following immunization surveillance for adult vaccination also, we should be utilizing the benefit of other vaccines which are available for adult population. I'm also seeing one of the question in the chat that Guillain-Barré syndrome is also reported after Covishield. Of course, what we need to know that these vaccines, majority of vaccines are safe. They can rarely have some of the adverse events, but the rate of those adverse events is really, really low. And also we know, as we know, whenever a large scale or mass scale vaccination drive is conducted, we always see the benefit and risk ratio. And that's why the benefit of vaccination in the current drive is far greater than any minimal risk. And that's not zero, there is a risk. So those risks are associated. Some of the rare adverse events are reported, which are not very common, but still they are there. And people should be made aware. Other thing is that this opportunity has come that the world, when wanted to develop vaccine against a particular disease, this is COVID-19, but there are many other conditions or pathogens which cause more severe disease, impacting larger population. The world and global communities, vaccine manufacturing nations should be thinking of developing vaccines against those challenges. So I completely agree that 2 years is enough time. Now we are better prepared to respond to COVID-19. It's time that we start thinking vaccination for other health conditions, for other groups, and bringing non-COVID services back to the normalcy.
Second take-home message from Dr. Kumarasamy, Dr. Gosavi, Dr. Laharia, and Dr. Sinha, as well as our own Dr. P.P. Joshi. And after that, I will hand over this particular session to Dr. Nainesh Patel.
You have an order to go, or?
Yeah, you have to start.
Sure. Thank you again, for the opportunity today. And I think we heard elegant talk from Dr. Laharia, on vaccines and about his insights, and as well as the molnupiravir data, and also this heated discussion about some of those debates happening on the usage of these molecules. So I think we all know that, the science, drives our clinical care, which we have seen. Science drives our public health. Not just on this COVID alone. We have seen in the past, science never lies, but it can lie. But on the other hand, with available good data on science, which is being validated by many bodies, I think we have to take it up from there in our intervention, either in prevention or treatment, to move forward. Now I'm going to stick on the treatment, since that was an assignment given to me to discuss as part of those panel discussions. The last 18 months, we have done a lot of things, whether knowingly or unknowingly, giving all the types of antibiotics unnecessarily, and a hydroxychloroquine without any effect, even having science said that don't give it, overused, not sure that how much adverse effects, and so many of them, even many of those physicians even swallowed as the prevention effect, and many of them infected, even hospitalized at that time. I know I have treated doctors who have been taken hydroxychloroquine, both with the disease as well as with complications. Ivermectin, again, so many views had been given. Favipiravir had been misused without any evidence on COVID, but in other viral diseases. And having said that, now we have got some interventions available. To my knowledge, there are only 4 currently being approved for use. One is Paxlovid. The monoclonal antibody, again, keeps changes depending upon the variant, because monoclonal antibody is always variant specific. And we do have remdesivir, and we have molnupiravir. So we have 4, all these 4 in the order. So I think as a clinician, right now, you have to choose a patient who can progress, who can hospitalize, who can die, to use these molecules at the appropriate time to do this. So today, COVID science is a moving science. It's a fast bullet science. Don't sit tightly with one. You have to move forward with whatever available information and keeping eye on this. And having said that, from an HIV treatment provider for more than 2.5 decades, where we have started using monotherapy, 2-drug therapy, triple therapy, what you've seen the success over a period of time, I personally feel as an infectious disease specialist, this COVID management will go towards that type of combination antiviral therapy for various reasons, to disrupt the pathogenesis, to prevent transmission, and also to prevent post-COVID complications. I think with this, I'll stop and hand over to my other colleagues. Thanks.
I totally agree with Dr. Kumar's view, and I have nothing much more to add to this. But a clinical approach to a patient who is coming to you, what is most important is not the time when he has tested himself positive, but time since when he has a first symptom of that particular episode. Because most of the patients nowadays are not testing urgently or on only when they think that it may be infectious to others, etc. Then only they are testing, and they are very casual in even testing. And there is no much surveillance from public health also. So what is most important is whether patient, since when the patient is symptomatic. And most of the patients, though they have a fever, etc., they are responding within 3 days of a symptom onset. If you have a patient who is in a setup and they may likely to deteriorate, then I think we should take a call on a day 4 or day 5 of his symptom onset. That is a window period. Up to that, we can use monoclonal antibody cocktail, etc. if patient is approaching and really ready to waste the money, because we do not have effective method of determining whether it's a delta or a non-delta, or Omicron or non-Omicron. So there is nothing to be panic about. Even investigation are not required like we used to do in a second wave or a first wave. Immediately we used to do all the markers on day 2 or day 3. I think we can afford to wait for even these markers for 4 to 5 days. If patient is not responding, then only you do it. Take the decision of that after 3 or 4 or 5 days of a symptom onset. Similarly, even there is no urgency of doing any radiological investigation up to 6 days or 5 days. This is my opinion. You may have different opinions, but we are ready to accept each other's view on the type of patient we are managing at present in this third wave, particularly when they are already vaccinated. So you need not be as panic as in a second wave. That was a very horrible wave. I think we can have a patience of 3 days, and you may manage the patient without only symptomatic, without even antibiotics. And if you want to use something like Omnipiravir or any antiviral drug, that has to be given in first 48 hours of symptom onset. That will be very, very effective if it is given in that time window period. That is what I wanted to say.
So I think a lot has been covered. So quick points that 2 years on in the pandemic, we have a better understanding. And recently, Government of India has revised guidelines on home isolation or in general isolation, also on the revised testing, which does not recommend testing of asymptomatic in community setting or not even or contacts of the confirmed COVID-19 cases in home setting. So testing approach has also been revised. The treatment guidelines by ICMR, AIMS, and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has also been revised. And Dr. Gosavi said correctly that for most of the asymptomatic and mild asymptomatic, neither blood tests are required nor CT scan is required. And in fact, so all they need is a symptomatic treatment. What we also know that in this Omicron wave, and I was just seeing alert, the government is saying that there is a community transmission, which essentially means it's a widespread. The measures are limited effectiveness in preventing spread. But with Omicron wave, what is being seen in majority of the clinical settings of clinical practice, that after exposure, the person can develop symptoms within 2 to 3 days, unlike the previous Delta variant where 5 to 7 days were required, the incubation period we call in the medical science. So this is a shorter time between the exposure to the developing symptom, 2 to 3 days. But what is equally important in this disease, people also recover very quickly within 2 to 3 days. And so that's one part. Second point is that we have seen that children are but never developing severe disease, even in the previous wave. Even with Omicron, children are protected. There is no additional risk to the children. Third thing is that vaccination coverage in India is really good, and keeping it up. Precaution shots are being given, and I would say that there is no rush for the precaution, additional population getting booster shot. In fact, I would go to the extent, because I explained earlier, that hybrid immunity, natural infection, 2 shots of vaccines essentially means that because in this wave, nearly half of the population, or probably more than that, would be infected. So India can be really calm and composed in taking decision on booster shot for healthy adult population. There is no rush on that. And final point I would like to make is, which is my own learning from this pandemic, is that while we medical fraternity is always very keen on our knowledge and understanding, but one of the challenge in this pandemic has been the science communication at all level. Like medical fraternity, even government has been really finding it difficult to communicate scientific evidence to the general public. So one of the learning which I have carried with me, I always try to improve how to communicate science to the general public in an easy way, which is useful for them. So probably all of us need to work on improving our science communication. That will benefit this country's health in the long run. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you so much. Dr. Milind Proshande sir, do you have anything more to add? Okay, so now I request Dr. S.J. Acharya, Chairman CME Committee, for his address.
Can I add one thing, one comment?
Please go ahead.
The treatment of mild COVID is very, there have been a lot of antiviral drugs which have been tried and have failed. We had favipiravir, which became the highest selling drug in April with absolutely no evidence that it worked. Then we have remdesivir, which till date has not shown mortality benefits. Even the recent Pine Tree study, which was published in the New England Journal of Medicine in December, on outdoor patients who received 3 doses of remdesivir, actually there were no deaths in either of the arms. So basically, remdesivir is another drug which has been used, which has been shown to reduce hospital stay, but majority of other trials have turned out to be negative. And now we have a new drug, molnupiravir, which has the potential to become another favipiravir. It is another drug which is freely available over the counter without prescription, may be available in India, and therefore that should be a strong message should be conveyed that at present there is no sufficient data to suggest that the benefits outweigh the risks, and therefore they have not been included in the national ICMR AIMS guidelines, and therefore it is important to communicate to the public and general public that molnupiravir should not be misused and should not be used rather, so that there are exceptional, because the benefits which have been shown in the move out trial was only 30% decrease, and the lower confidence interval was -0.1, which means it's just touch towards being non-significant, and therefore in absence of such benefit and some potential harm which can occur, it is important that we should not use molnupiravir till such time that data regarding its safety, until such time that the national guidelines tell us to use it.
Thank you very much,
Treatment
Dr.
of moderate and severe.
Thank you, Dr. P.P. Joshi. Now can we go ahead with this conclusion of this seminar? Thank you very much for your nice judgment and nice conclusion remarks. Dear friends, we had a very nice seminar, and here we had Dr. Shubhadeep Saha, Dr. Kumar Swamy, Dr. Laharia, and Dr. Gosavi, Dr. Milind Bhusundi, who have really nicely elaborated on different points on this dreaded disease. Dr. Laharia has said that the vaccination played a major role in reducing the severity of the COVID. 160 crore people of India have been vaccinated. 91% adults have been vaccinated with 1 dose, while 70% have got 2 doses. But we must remember that the vaccines do not replace mask and physical distancing. The infection is not prevented by vaccine. He also told that the Omicron increased antibody level by 14-fold, while vaccines increase it by 3 times only. So those who have got a reinfection or infection with Omicron the booster dose can be delayed by 3 months, and otherwise the booster dose should be given in those who are prone for the infection, like elderlies, like immunocompromised patients. The intranasal vaccine gives temporary protection. So initially it will be useful, but on the community basis, it may not be that useful because it protects only for a shorter duration of time. Dr. Shubhadeep Saha, he talked about the molnupiravir, and he said that its structure is like remdesivir. It gets incorporated into the RNA and decrease the infectivity. The dose is 800 milligram twice a day, and there is no dose adjustment with any renal disease or hepatic disorder. While Dr. P.P. Joshi has warned us that as it will be available, or it is available over the counter, but one should be careful about the misuse of this drug. Dr. Shubhadeep Saha told that the molnupiravir, the hospitalization rate is 9% versus 26% with placebo. Now, with all this information, we are now more wise about the use of these drugs and about the vaccination schedule. My heartfelt thanks to AMS for giving us the opportunity to listen to this wonderful seminar. And now I hand over the mic to Dr. Meena Mishra to conclude the session. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, so much. And I over to the Honorable Secretary, Dr. Nanesh Patel, for the formal vote of thanks.
Sir, you are mute.
Over to Dr. Nanesh. I hope he's there.
Just a second, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I will like to apologize for the technical glitch that we had at the start of the program, and our audience was kind enough to bear with us. I'll start with our speakers and panelists today. Dr. Chandrakant Laharia, sir, Dr. Shubhadeep Saha, sir, Dr. N. Kumaraswamy, and Dr. Rajesh Gosavi, sir. I thank our chairpersons, Dr. Sunil Khaparde, sir, Dr. Mundle, sir, Joshi, sir, and Ashwini Tade, madam. I'd like to thank MMC Observer, Dr. Vivek Bhalerao, sir, who happens to be past MS president, in fact. Thank to Madam Mishra for being the host of this CME. Special thank to the convener and our moderator, Dr. Bhushandi, sir, CME Chairman, Dr. Acharya, sir. I thank Association of Physicians of India, Vidarbha Chapter Chairman, Dr. Kaduskar, sir, Secretary, Dr. Kharkar, sir. I would like to thank Hetero Pharma for their educational grant and their support. I would like to thank our office staff, especially Praveen and Vilas. And of course, I would like to thank our audience, who once again, I apologize for their technical problem that they faced, but they were with us in spite of that. So thank you, everybody. With this, we come to the close of the CME. Thank you, everybody. Have a very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.